Chapter 6:14. Number 1 on the law rank. At this moment, everyone on the Great Wall was silent. Mo Yunshan, number 7 on the law rank, couldn't even last 2 moves. And this Lin Xiaobai directly challenged the little teacher, who was number 1 on the law rank. Somewhere, Zhao Mu was about to go down, but someone grabbed her arm. It was Yi Xian. Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian with an unfriendly expression. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "That person isn't the strongest among the younger generation of the God Nation." As he spoke, he pointed at the man and woman behind the little girl in the distance. "Do you see those two?" Zhao Mu looked at the man and woman. At this moment, the man and woman seemed to sense something and suddenly looked up at the two. The lady only took a glance before withdrawing her gaze, while the man smiled as if he was greeting her. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "What do you think of these two?" Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian coldly. Yi Xian looked puzzled. "Miss Zhao, I told you to look at them. Why are you looking at me? Am I that good looking?" Zhao Mu glanced at Yi Xian's hand. At this moment, his hand was still holding onto her arm. Yi Xian was stunned. Then he smiled and let go of Zhao Mu's hand. "Sorry, I didn't do it on purpose. You know that I'm not that kind of person." Zhao Mu stared at Yi Xian with a sharp gaze. Yi Xian quickly changed the topic. He looked down and said, "Miss Zhao, what do you think of those two?" Zhao Mu didn't say anything. She pointed at Yi Xian and then at Lin Xiaobai. Obviously, she was asking Yi Xian to fight. Yi Xian shook his head. "No, I won't fight." Zhao Mu frowned. Yi Xian said in a low voice, "I was injured by the Star Lord. My butt still hurts, so I can't fight." Zhao Mu was speechless. Below the wall, Lin Xiaobai saw that no one came out. He looked up at the people on the wall. No one. At this moment, a burly youth suddenly landed in front of Lin Xiaobai. Taoist Master Chu's disciple, Iron Bull. And he was ranked 4th on the law rank. Iron Bull looked at Lin Xiaobai. "Are you the strongest in God Nation?" "The strongest in God Nation?" Lin Xiaobai shook his head and smiled. "This brother, please don't speak nonsense. I will be laughed at." Iron Bull frowned. "You're not the strongest?" Lin Xiaobai smiled and said, "No." Iron Bull asked, "Then who is the strongest?" Lin Xiaobai turned around and glanced at the man and woman behind the God Nation's divine master. His eyes were filled with respect and a tinge of helplessness. Those two were the most outstanding geniuses of theocracy. Of course, that was excluding the divine master. Iron Bull glanced at the man and woman in the distance. Both of them had a calm aura, and there was no hint of an expert's aura at all. They gave him the feeling that they were just ordinary people. Iron Bull withdrew his gaze and looked at Lin Xiaobai. "Let's begin." Lin Xiaobai nodded. In the next instant, his figure suddenly disappeared. Not far away, Iron Bull punched out. Boom! This punch caused the surrounding space to tremble violently, and Lin Xiaobai instantly returned to his original position. The moment his feet touched the ground, the entire ground exploded. What power! Somewhere on a mountain, Yi Xian looked at Iron Bull in shock. This Iron Bull's strength was too strong. Below, Lin Xiaobai glanced at Iron Bull and smiled. "That's more like it." As soon as he finished speaking, he suddenly disappeared. Not far away, Iron Bull punched out. Simple and direct. Rumble. The surrounding space trembled, and a figure directly retreated. This time, it was Iron Bull. Very quickly, numerous afterimages suddenly appeared around Iron Bull. At the same time, a powerful force pressed down on Iron Bull like a torrential storm. Iron Bull retreated again and again. Seeing this scene, the faces of the people on the city wall sank. In the void, Spiritual Master Chu was expressionless, and no one could tell whether he was happy or angry. Somewhere on a mountain, Yi Xian looked at Iron Bull and Lin Xiaobai below and said softly, "Miss Zhao, who do you think has a higher chance of winning?" Zhao Mu looked down and didn't speak. Yi Xian looked at Zhao Mu and said, "Miss Zhao, I think you're definitely stronger than Lin Xiaobai." Zhao Mu glanced at Yi Xian and lightly drew a line in front of her with her finger. A small annoyance word appeared in front of Yi Xian, and then she walked to the other side. Yi Xian hurriedly followed. "Miss Zhao, it's so boring to watch alone. I'll watch with you." Zhao Mu was speechless. At this moment, An explosion suddenly sounded from below the city wall, and then a figure retreated rapidly. This person was Lin Xiaobai. As Lin Xiaobai was retreating, Iron Bull suddenly roared. In the next moment, he stomped his right foot and pounced forward like a wild beast. Not far away, Lin Xiaobai frowned slightly. He clenched his right hand and the space in front of him instantly overlapped. At this moment, Iron Bull arrived. Rumble! The space in front of Lin Xiaobai trembled. There was a moment of silence. Bang! The space in front of Lin Xiaobai instantly exploded apart, and a powerful force instantly blasted Lin Xiaobai over 1 kilometer away. As soon as he stopped moving, Iron Bull suddenly appeared in front of him, and then Iron Bull smashed his fist towards his face. The powerful force directly tore space apart. Lin Xiaobai's eyes narrowed slightly, and then he placed his palms together and pushed them forward. Rumble! Lin Xiaobai was instantly blasted 300 m away. He just landed on the ground when his arms shattered, and a wisp of blood flowed slowly from the corner of his mouth. Countless people on the walls of the Great Wall suddenly cheered when they witnessed this scene. Meanwhile, Nan Gongwan, who stood by the divine leader's side, spoke softly. This person possesses the divine strength of a heavenly god. He's a good seedling. Unfortunately, he didn't make good use of his divine strength. Otherwise, he would be able to enter the top 5 of the divine martial rankings. Meanwhile, the dark-clothed man by the divine leader's side spoke abruptly. Your Majesty, allow me. The divine leader shook his head. He isn't qualified. As soon as she finished speaking, a young man suddenly appeared before Iron Bull. The young man glanced at Iron Bull, divine martial rankings, 5th, Lin Huan. Iron Bull slowly clenched his right fist. Iron Bull! Lin Huan nodded lightly, and in the next moment, he suddenly disappeared. In an instant, the surrounding space began to crack. Seeing this scene, Taoist Master Chu's face suddenly changed. Peak of the Tao Mastery Realm. Iron Bull's expression also turned solemn at this moment. He didn't dare to be careless, and he stomped his right foot and punched out. The punch was like a volcanic eruption. Boom! In an instant, the space around Iron Bull directly shattered, turning pitch black. In that pitch-black space, a series of explosions rang out continuously, and the space that had just recovered shattered once again. Just like that, about 15 minutes later, the space returned to normal, and at this moment a figure flew out. It was Iron Bull. Seeing this scene, the faces of everyone on the city wall sank. Under everyone's gaze, Iron Bull smashed into the city wall, and the entire city wall trembled. At this moment, a figure flashed past. Iron Bull, who was on the ground, leaped up and roared furiously, raising his arms to block. At this moment, Lin Huan kicked Iron Bull's arms. Bang! The surrounding space trembled violently, and Iron Bull directly smashed into the city wall. The entire city wall instantly cracked, and blood flowed out of the corner of Iron Bull's mouth. At this moment, Lin Huan suddenly slammed his palm down. Iron Bull's pupils constricted. He couldn't take this palm. However, Lin Huan's hand stopped an inch away from Iron Bull's head. Lin Huan retreated a few meters, and he glanced at Iron Bull, whose body had already cracked. You lost. Iron Bull wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth. I lost. Why didn't you kill me? Lin Huan said indifferently, because you didn't kill brother Lin Xiaobai just now. If Iron Bull had killed him just now, Lin Xiaobai wouldn't have survived. After a moment of silence, Iron Bull retreated to the side, and he raised his head to look at Perfected Master Chu in the sky. Master, Perfected Master Chu said, you've done well enough. Go and treat your injuries. Iron Bull nodded, then turned and left. Not far away, Lin Huan raised his head to look at the people on the city wall. Show me something powerful. Show me something powerful. Hearing Lin Huan's words, the expressions of the people on the city wall turned extremely ugly. At this moment, a woman suddenly appeared in front of Lin Huan. This person was Zhao Mu. Seeing Zhao Mu, Lin Huan nodded slightly. Make your move. Zhao Mu slowly closed her eyes. Lin Huan squinted his eyes, and he slowly clenched his fists. At this moment, Zhao Mu suddenly opened her eyes, and in the next moment, her body turned illusory, and everyone could see her soul. In the blink of an eye, Zhao Mu suddenly charged forward and punched out. When the punch was thrown, there was no movement at all. However, the expressions of the people on the scene instantly changed. Not far away, the woman behind the Divine Master suddenly said softly, "Returning to one's natural state. Transcendent Martial Saint Peak. Interesting." The man smiled faintly, but he didn't say anything. The Divine Master closed his eyes, and he didn't even look. In front of Zhao Mu, Lin Huan's expression instantly changed. He clenched his fists, and a powerful aura suddenly gathered in his body. In the next moment, he punched forward. At this moment, Zhao Mu's punch arrived. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, Lin Huan instantly retreated a few hundred meters. As soon as he stopped, Lin Huan's body cracked, and blood splattered. On the other hand, Zhao Mu's face was a little pale. That attack just now was her full strength. Not far away, Lin Huan wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth, and he looked at Zhao Mu. Transcendent Martial Saint. I've lost. At this moment, the woman behind the Divine Master with a flute suddenly appeared in front of Zhao Mu. Seeing this woman, the Southern Sex Martial Master in the void instantly turned solemn. The flute woman glanced at Zhao Mu. Heal. Zhao Mu's attack had consumed too much of her energy, and she was currently not in her peak condition. However, Zhao Mu shook her head, and she was about to make a move. At this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of Zhao Mu, and Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "She asked you to heal, so you healed. Why are you acting tough?" Zhao Mu glared at Yi Xian, as if to ask why you're here again. Yi Xian turned to look at the flute woman and smiled. "I'll bring her to heal now." After that, he turned around and pulled Zhao Mu away. Zhao Mu was about to resist, but Yi Xian's voice rang out in her mind. "If you don't heal, you won't stand a chance against her." Zhao Mu raised her fist, and walked towards the flute woman. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. "Go and treat your injuries. I will fight this battle for you." Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian walked towards the flute woman. "I'll fight with you." The flute woman glanced at Yi Xian. "You're Yi Xian." Yi Xian's heart leaped. "You've heard of me?" The flute woman nodded. Yi Xian laughed. "Who would have thought that I, Yi Xian, would be so famous in your god kingdom?" The flute woman continued. "The information says that you have no bottom line, and that you're shameless and shameless. You don't seem like a swordsman, but more like a despicable cultivator. Is that true?" Yi Xian was speechless. Chapter 6:15. Yi Xian's face instantly darkened when he heard the flute woman's words. Despicable cultivator? Who's trying to ruin my reputation? Meanwhile, the flute woman suddenly said, "Make your move." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said, "I have an idea." The flute woman glanced at Yi Xian. "What idea?" Yi Xian said, "You're a genius, and I'm a dragon among men. If we fight like this, I'm afraid we won't be able to decide the victor without fighting for 3 days and 3 nights. So, I suggest that each of us attack once without dodging, and the one who retreats the furthest loses. How about it?" The flute woman looked at Yi Xian and was about to speak when an angry voice suddenly resounded nearby. "Don't believe him." A familiar voice. Yi Xian and the flute woman turned around and saw a woman glaring angrily at Yi Xian. It was the saber-sex Xueqi. Xueqi glared angrily at Yi Xian. "You're a liar." Yi Xian said with a serious expression, "Don't talk nonsense. I'm an honest man." "Tui." Xueqi spat fiercely on the ground. "Don't insult an honest man." Yi Xian was speechless. Xueqi looked at the flute woman. "Big sister Nanyin, you mustn't believe this man. He's very bad." The woman called Nanyin smiled. "Is he very bad?" Xueqi nodded. "Very, very bad. He knows a spatial technique, and he doesn't even need to make a move to teleport you away." Nanyin turned to look at Yi Xian. "Is that so?" Yi Xian was about to speak when Nanyin suddenly said, "Take this move. If you can take it, you won't die. Take this move." Yi Xian looked at Nanyin. "Do you look down on me that much?" Nanyin smiled and said, "If you accept it, it means you think highly of him. If you don't, it means you look down on him." Just as Yi Xian was about to speak, Xueqi suddenly said, "Sister Nanyin, he has a sword, a very, very powerful sword, the kind that surpasses the Tao realm. If he uses that sword, there's a slight chance that he can take one of your attacks." But at this point, she looked at Yi Xian. "But as a peer, you definitely won't use that sword, right?" Yi Xian said calmly, I know how to use it. Xueqi looked at Yi Xian. I've underestimated how thick your skin is. Yi Xian ignored the little girl and looked at Nan Yin. Miss Nan Yin, there's no need to say anything. Let's exchange a blow and decide the winner in one move. How about it? Nan Yin nodded slightly. Sure. Yi Xian opened his palm and a sword appeared in his hand. Executing Heaven's Sword. He didn't dare to be careless facing this woman. Because this woman gave him a dangerous feeling, even more dangerous than the Star Lord. If he hadn't become a transcendent sword sage, he wouldn't have dared to be careless. Yi Xian wasn't the only genius in the world. Never underestimate anyone. When Yi Xian took out the sword, not far away, the Divine Nation's master, who had been keeping her eyes closed, suddenly opened her eyes. Her gaze fell on the executing Heaven's sword in Yi Xian's hand, and the sword at her waist was trembling slightly. The Master God placed his left hand on the sword and said softly, Do you recognize this sword? The sword trembled. The Master God looked at Yi Xian calmly. In the distance, in front of Yi Xian, Nan Yin's gaze also fell on the sword in Yi Xian's hand. There was a hint of curiosity in her eyes as she looked at the sword. Good sword. Cheap. Yi Xian's face darkened. Why are you scolding me? Nan Yin was speechless. At this moment, Yi Xian said calmly, Miss Nan Yin, let's begin. As soon as he said that, he gripped the sword tightly in his right hand. Endless earth force began to gather at his feet. In front of Yi Xian, Nan Yin held the flute tightly in her left hand. In the next second, the space around her suddenly became illusory. At this moment, she seemed to have left the world. Upon seeing this scene, the Southern Sect Martial Master's expression sank. Half-step Heavenly Dao Realm. Half-step Tendo. He, the Star Lord, and the others were all Tendo, but Nan Yin was a half-step Tendo. Half-step Tendo wasn't scary. What was scary was that Nan Yin looked like she was only in her 20s. A 20-year-old half-step Tendo. She was no worse than Gu Tatian from the Lawful Order Alliance. Back then, Gu Tatian had only reached the half-step Dao mastering state at the age of 21. In the void, the Star Lord and the others were looking down at Nan Yin. At this moment, endless earth force had gathered around Yi Xian. At this moment, he felt like he was the master of the earth. As long as he stood on the ground, he would have endless power. At this moment, Yi Xian looked at Nan Yin. Come. As soon as he said that, he suddenly disappeared. Swoosh. A ray of earthy yellow sword light flashed across the field. Opposite Yi Xian, Nan Yin slowly closed her eyes. In the next moment, the space around her began to burn. At this moment, Yi Xian slashed down with his sword. Buzz! The sound of a sword reverberated in the sky. How terrifying was the power of the great Dao Law combined with the executing Heaven's sword. As Yi Xian slashed down with his sword, the space within thousands of feet cracked into a spider web. It was extremely frightening. At this moment, the space around Yi Xian and Nan Yin was directly destroyed by a mysterious power. It was as if it had been directly erased, and it was not a simple shattering of space. However, at this moment, the erased space returned to its original state, and the power of Yi Xian's sword was still there. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, Nan Yin, who was in front of Yi Xian, suddenly retreated hundreds of feet. He won? In the field, everyone looked at the nearby Yi Xian and Nan Yin. Nan Yin looked at Yi Xian, who was in the distance. You can repair space. Yi Xian nodded. Nan Yin asked, How did you do it? Yi Xian grinned. I'm not telling you. With that, he turned and left. The moment he turned around, his expression became extremely solemn. In that instant, that woman had almost taken his life. Because the mysterious power that she had used to burn space had even burned his earth force and earth vein force. If he had been hit by that power, he would have died without a doubt. Fortunately, he had been prepared to use the Space Dao Law at all times. If the Space Dao Law had not immediately repaired the space and caused that power to disappear, he would have died without a doubt. Fortunately, he had not underestimated his opponent. Nearby, Nan Yin frowned slightly. She was about to speak when a voice suddenly sounded in her mind. That's the Dao Law, the Major Dao Law and the Space Dao Law. He used the Space Dao Law to repair the space. If you had used other powers, you would have won. Nan Yin fell silent. The person who spoke was her master, a Tendo expert. At this moment, the voice sounded again. Don't feel indignant. People can win, but they also have to be able to lose. A win is a win, a loss is a loss. Nan Yin bowed slightly to the sky. Disciple understands. With that, she looked at Yi Xian in the distance. I've lost. With that, she turned and left. Nearby, Yi Xian stopped in his tracks. He sighed softly in his heart. Some people were indeed so outstanding that he could not help but admire them. At this moment, Zhao Mu walked up to Yi Xian. A trace of blood slowly flowed from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. He grabbed Zhao Mu's arm. I'm injured. It hurts. Quick, help me up. As he spoke, he conveniently leaned on Zhao Mu's body. Zhao Mu frowned slightly. She was about to make a move when another trace of blood flowed from the corner of Yi Xian's mouth. Not only that, but his face had also become abnormally pale. The consumption was too great. Previously, he had used 2 types of Dao laws and the executing heaven sword. In addition, he had forcefully resisted Nan Yin's power. Therefore, he had suffered a huge backlash. After hesitating for a while, Zhao Mu did not make a move in the end. In the end, she left with Yi Xian. As for Yi Xian, he had placed his hand on Zhao Mu's waist. The warmth and fragrance of a woman in his arms were better than countless things in the world. In the void, the astral master looked down at Yi Xian. His expression was calm, but in the depths of his eyes, there was a cold, murderous intent. Yi Xian was much stronger than before. At this moment, the Southern Sex Martial Master suddenly said, Astral Master, you have to figure out who our biggest enemy is right now. The Astral Master looked at the Southern Sex Martial Master. The latter looked straight at him. If you still don't know the severity of the situation, that old man will not care about anything anymore. Siding with Yi Xian. This time, the Southern Sex Martial Master was clearly siding with Yi Xian. Among the Southern Sex Martial Master, the Astral Master admired Yi Xian quite a bit. Especially just now, if Zhao Mu, whose vitality was greatly injured, was allowed to fight against Nan Yin, Zhao Mu would most likely die. And Yi Xian suddenly came out to help. Obviously, he wanted to protect Zhao Mu. Thinking of this, the Southern Sex Martial Master looked at the Astral Master again. Astral Master, the old man doesn't want to care about your grudge with him. However, the most important thing now is to fight against the God race. If you dare to act recklessly, the old man will not be polite. The Astral Master squinted his eyes. His expression was unfriendly. At this moment, Spiritual Master Chu suddenly said, The 2 of you should not fight at this time. As he spoke, he looked down at the God race's army. The God race's army is still here. Isn't having an internal conflict courting death? As for that Yi Xian, don't bother about him for now. After this matter is over, we will deal with him. Hearing this, the Astral Master retracted his gaze and slowly closed his eyes. The Southern Sex Martial Master also retracted his gaze. Below, after Yi Xian defeated Nan Yin, both sides strangely quietened down. Everyone was looking at the God Master of the God race not far away. As for the God race's side, they were also waiting for the God Master's orders. Whether it was a duel or a battle, it all depended on the God Master's decision. That's it. Suddenly, a voice resounded from afar. After that, a man walked over slowly from afar. The man had a blade of grass in his mouth, and he seemed quite sloppy. 7th Young Master Tang. Tang Yen looked down at 7th Young Master Tang, and a wisp of a smile appeared on his face. This fellow. 7th Young Master Tang. Someone cried out in surprise. Obviously, someone had recognized him. Under the gazes of everyone, 7th Young Master Tang arrived before the God Master and the others. He gazed at the little girl and smiled. I'm not interested in anyone else, so I'll fight you. What do you think? The little girl pointed at the Great Wall. 7th Young Master Tang turned around and looked at the Great Wall. In the next moment, the little girl drew her sword and slashed. An ray of light flashed. Bang! Before everyone's eyes, the entire Great Wall of 10,000 mountains crumbled in an instant. Not only did the Great Wall of 10,000 mountains crumble, even the mountain that the Great Wall of 10,000 mountains was leaning against was split into 2. And that strand of sword chi did not disappear. It pierced through the air, covering a distance of 90,000 miles. Destruction of 10,000 mountains. P.S. I can't update every day for now. Why? Because the day of eruption is coming. I can't help it. I have to save chapters. If I update every day, I won't be able to save chapters. Because it's impossible for me to write 4 chapters, or I'll collapse if I write 4 chapters. This is mental work. I've been updating every day for the last month, and I've already taken a lot of kidney treasure tablets, but I can't make up for it. Chapter 6:16. When this divine master drew his sword, the surroundings fell into a deathly silence. Everyone in the surroundings was stunned, especially the 5 Star Lords in the void. At this moment, the 5 of them had an unprecedented solemn expression on their faces. None of the 5 of them might be able to withstand the power of that sword, and the person who had unleashed this sword strike was actually a little girl. Divine Master. Everyone in the surroundings was looking at the little girl. How monstrous was she? Somewhere, Yi Xian also had a solemn expression. That sword just now. He could not do it. It was not impossible. If he used all his trump cards, such as Bloodline Power, Great Dao Law, Space Dao Law, and All Heaven's Sword, he could do it. However, that little girl had just casually attacked with her sword. Very casually. Yi Xian was a little confused. Before this, he felt that he should be one of the best among the younger generation of swordsmen. However, there was someone even more monstrous. At this moment, Zhao Mu, who was next to him, suddenly glanced at him. Yi Xian leaned on Zhao Mu. My young heart has been hurt. Please comfort me. Zhao Mu was speechless. The 7th Tang was silent in front of the little girl. There was no smile on his face anymore. If that sword had been aimed at him, it was likely that he would have been killed instantly. The little girl turned to look at the black-robed man next to her. The black-robed man bowed slightly and then walked in front of the 7th Tang. God Nation, 2nd on the God list, Mu Yun-jun, 2nd on the God list. 7th Tang looked at the black-robed man and said with a smile, Please enlighten me. As soon as he said that, their eyes met. The next moment. Rumble. Under everyone's gazes, the space around them collapsed and shattered, and a series of explosions resounded incessantly from within the pitch-black spatial hole. The little girl suddenly said, How are the arrangements? Nan Gongwan bowed slightly. Everything has been arranged. After entering the other 3 deserted worlds, our people will immediately take over everything. The little girl nodded. Only kill the warriors who resist. Nan Gongwan nodded. Understood. Right at this moment, the space in front of the little girl returned to normal. At this moment, Tang Qi and Mu Yun-jun faced each other from afar. Tang Qi's expression was solemn, while Mu Yun-ji's expression was still calm. Tang Qi looked at Mu Yun-jun and said, Decide the winner with one move? Mu Yun-jun nodded. Sure. Tang Qi grinned, and his body suddenly rose into the air. The next moment, the surrounding space began to boil like a boiling book, and a powerful force gathered towards him from the heavens and the earth. In the void, there was a hint of surprise in Spiritual Master Chu's eyes. Power of heaven and earth, as he spoke. He glanced at Tang Yen, who was not far away. Congratulations. Mastering the power of the heavens and the earth was equivalent to the half-step Tendo realm. After reaching the half-step Tendo realm, entering the Tendo realm was only a matter of time. It could be said that as long as Tang Qi did not die, the Tang family would have another Tendo expert in the future. Tang Yen did not reply to perfected Master Chu. He kept looking down with a solemn expression. 7th Tang was indeed a monster. However, was Mu Yun-jun, who came from the God Nation, weak? The 2 geniuses did not hold back their attacks. They might decide the winner, but they might also decide life and death. Below, the power around 7th Tang was getting stronger and stronger, but Mu Yun-jun still did not move. He was very calm. At this moment, 7th Tang's palm suddenly fell. As the palm fell, it was as if the sky had collapsed, and a destructive force swept towards Mu Yun-jun, power of the heavens and the earth. Facing this destructive palm, Mu Yun-jun's expression was still calm. When the force reached the top of his head, he suddenly opened his palm and clenched it. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, the space around Mu Yun-jun began to turn illusory, and the moment 7th Tang's power fell, it strangely disappeared. In the void, The faces of the Star Lord and the others became extremely ugly. It was unsightly. Tang Yan's eyes were extremely solemn, and he hurriedly shouted, "Concede! Concede!" Below, Mu Yunjun suddenly disappeared. In an instant. Rumble. Before the crowd could react, Seventh Tang was sent flying. Seventh Tang landed heavily on the ground, and a trace of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. He wiped the blood away and stared at Mu Yunjun in the distance. Tendo Realm. This Mu Yunjun was not a half-step Tendo Realm, but a Tendo Realm. Mu Yunjun glanced at Seventh Tang and then retreated behind the little girl. The little girl looked up at the Star Lord in the void. Surrender? Obviously, she did not want to waste any more time. Because everything was ready. In the void, the Star Lord looked coldly at the little girl. "Show me what you've got." The little girl nodded. "As you wish." As soon as she finished speaking, the 3,000 paladins behind her suddenly charged forward. The 3,000 paladins charged together, and the earth began to tremble. At this moment, in the mountain range of the Great Wall of 10,000 mountains, the mountains suddenly shook, and soon, a group of about 2,000 cavalry suddenly charged out. The Tang Clan Cavalry. The 2,000 Tang Clan cavalry charged together, and the mountains shook. Their momentum was not inferior to the 3,000 paladins of the God Nation. In the open space, the two powerful cavalry clashed in the most violent way. Intense. It had to be said that the two cavalry clans were too strong. As soon as the battle began, the sky fell and the earth cracked. And at this moment, dozens of black-clothed men suddenly rushed out from the city. In the next moment, they appeared beside the two cavalry squads like ghosts. Just as they were about to attack the Divine Kingdom's cavalry, 9 black-clothed men suddenly appeared in front of them. The next moment, the heads of the dozens of men in black flew out one after another. In a battle between cavalry, if there were assassins in the dark, it would definitely be fatal. The Star Lord and the others thought of this, and so did the God Nation. Seeing that his assassins were slaughtered, the Star Lord in the void hurriedly said, "Enforcers!" As soon as he finished speaking, a group of shadows suddenly rushed out from a mountain on the right. However, before they could leave the mountain, they were blocked by a group of men in black robes. These men in black robes all held broken swords in their hands, and their figures were as elusive as ghosts. Without any nonsense, the two sides directly started fighting. In the void, the faces of the Star Lord and the others were extremely ugly. Obviously, the God race was prepared. The Star Lord and the others looked at the Demon King, and the Demon King nodded slightly. The next moment, in the depths of the mountain, the earth and the mountains began to tremble violently. Soon, roars suddenly sounded from the mountain range. The Demon Race Army. And at this moment, a giant golden dragon suddenly flew down from the void. In the next moment, it directly appeared in front of the Demon Race Army, and a wave of dragons might forced all the Demon Race experts to stop. Seeing this scene, the Demon King's face suddenly darkened. In the next moment, he directly shot toward the giant golden dragon. He had to get rid of this giant golden dragon, or all the Demon Race experts would be directly crippled. However, before he could reach the giant golden dragon, a middle-aged man blocked in front of him. The middle-aged man had a long saber hanging from his waist. The Demon King looked coldly at the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man smiled slightly. "Saber sect Xiao Chongha." The Demon King did not say anything and directly shot toward Xiao Chongha. In the distance, Xiao Chongha suddenly drew his saber. Chi! A wave of saber light appeared in the sky. In the void, the Star Lord suddenly shouted, "Divine Tao Army!" As soon as his voice fell, a group of soldiers riding giant dragons suddenly appeared in the mountains. 3,000 Divine Tao Army. 3,000 giant dragons. It could be said that this was all the giant dragons in this chaotic universe. And in order to prevent the giant golden dragon from suppressing these giant dragons, the Star Lord directly had people take out a large array to fight against the giant golden dragon. It should be said that they could only delay the giant golden dragon. That giant golden dragon's strength was at least in the Tendo realm. Ordinary experts could not stop it at all. After the large array appeared, the giant golden dragon was delayed. At the same time, the 3,000 Divine Tao Army directly rushed toward the little girl and the others. At the same time, the 3,000 Divine Tao Army directly rushed toward the little girl and the others not far away. The momentum of the 3,000 Divine Tao Army and the 3,000 giant dragons directly overshadowed the Tang Clan Iron Cavalry and the Divine Nation Cavalry below. And the target of these 3,000 people was the little girl. At this moment, the 1,000 divine guards behind the little girl suddenly moved. They did not move like a mountain, but when they moved, they were like ferocious tigers breaking out of their cages. The 1,000 divine guards directly rushed toward the group of divine Dao army. How terrifying was it when 1,000 Dao verification experts charged in unison. After the divine guards charged out, the little girl gently pressed her right hand forward, and the 9 armies behind her suddenly pressed down toward the Great Wall. 90,000 soldiers pressed down in unison, and just the pressure they emanated was enough to make many experts on the Great Wall gasp for breath. Countless experts on the Great Wall had extremely solemn expressions on their faces, and some had even started to retreat. No one wanted to lose their lives here. However, those experts who were about to retreat were directly killed by some men in black. The law enforcers. Meanwhile, the Star-Lord's voice resounded in the sky. Anyone who dares to retreat will be killed without mercy. The law enforcers were right behind them. No one dared to retreat anymore. Meanwhile, the Star-Lord suddenly said, "If we win, all of you can freely plunder for 3 days after entering the Divine Nation. All the wealth in the Divine Nation will belong to all of you." Wealth. The eyes of many experts instantly burned with desire when they heard the Star-Lord. Suddenly someone shouted, "Charge!" Soon, countless experts charged toward the Divine Nation's army. Not far away, the little girl turned to look at Nangong Wan, and the latter bowed slightly. She waved her right hand, and a long flag suddenly shot into the sky. After a moment of silence, countless experts suddenly appeared in the distant sky. These experts were all from various clans and sections. There were many of them and they were very, very strong. The moment they saw these experts, the expressions of the Star-Lord and the others in the sky instantly became extremely ugly. If there was a slight chance of victory just now, then the Divine Nation's strength had completely crushed them now. It was a complete and utter suppression. The Star-Lord and the others looked at each other, and finally, the Star-Lord said in a deep voice, "If we don't use our trump cards, we can only wait for death. To catch bandits, we must first capture their leader. Kill that little girl first." As he spoke, he looked at everyone. "Who will go first?" Tang Yen suddenly said, "Let my Tang clan go first." As the sound of his voice faded, he opened his palm, and a lotus flower suddenly appeared. In the next moment, this lotus flower floated into the air, and as it did so, it grew rapidly against the wind. Soon, under the gazes of everyone present, a white light suddenly appeared above the lotus flower, and within the white light stood a woman in white. Mu Nanji, the most outstanding clan leader in the history of the Tang clan. Below, the little girl looked up at the woman, her face expressionless. And behind her, the 2 old men holding swords had a rare solemn expression. Not only that, the 2 of them even stood in front of the little girl from behind. The little girl gently waved her right hand, and the 2 old men hesitated for a moment, then retreated behind her. Above the lotus, Mu Nanji's eyes gradually became clear. She looked around, and finally, her gaze fell on the little girl below. The little girl did not show any weakness, and looked at Mu Nanji directly. Mu Nanji sized up the little girl, and there was a trace of surprise in her eyes. "Natural sword Dao spiritual body, As her voice fell, she pinched her fingers, and very quickly, the space above the little girl suddenly became illusory, and soon, an image appeared above the little girl's head. It was a gray world, and a woman in a plain dress stood in the clouds, looking down with an indifferent expression. Below, countless people looked at the woman in the clouds, and their eyes were filled with despair. And opposite the woman in the plain dress, there was a swordsman in a green robe, and a swordsman in a white robe. At this moment, the image suddenly trembled, and became more and more blurry. Suddenly, the woman in the plain dress in the clouds suddenly swung her sword, and in the next moment, the sword directly pierced through the woman's forehead, and she slowly fell from the sky. The image suddenly stopped. Mu Nanji looked at the little girl. "That was your previous life." Chapter 6:17. Past Life. The little girl looked at Mu Nanji in the sky. "What does my past life have to do with me?" Mu Nanji smiled. "That may be so, but your past life was not simple." The little girl looked straight at Mu Nanji. "I am who I am. No karma can affect me." Mu Nanji looked at the little girl. Some karma is yours to begin with. No one can force it on you. The little girl was expressionless. Why say so much? Come and fight. Mu Nanji did not get angry at the little girl's aggressiveness. She smiled. You want to unify the Chaos Verse? The little girl looked straight at Mu Nanji. The Chaos Verse is always at war. If I unify it, the world will be at peace. Mu Nanji smiled. Then do you know that the world is divided for a long time and united for a long time? Even if you unify the Chaos Verse now, it will still return to war in the future. The little girl was expressionless. Let's not talk about the future. Let's do what we do now. Mu Nanji was about to speak when she suddenly turned to look at Yi Xian, who was standing on the broken city wall not far away. Yi Xian was in the middle of treating his injuries. As if sensing Mu Nanji's gaze, Yi Xian looked up at her. Mu Nanji sized up Yi Xian. Her eyes flashed with surprise. The next moment, she pinched her fingers together. Soon, the space above Yi Xian suddenly trembled. Yi Xian suddenly asked, "Do you want to read my fortune?" Mu Nanji stopped and looked at Yi Xian. "Can I?" Yi Xian thought for a moment and nodded. "Fine. I also want to see what kind of person I was in my past life." Mu Nanji smiled. Her fingers began to move quickly. Soon, a mysterious power appeared in the surroundings. This power was something Yi Xian had never seen before. At this moment, an image suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. Yi Xian looked up curiously. However, at this moment, dark clouds suddenly gathered in the sky, and an extremely terrifying pressure came crashing down from the sky. Seeing this, Mu Nanji frowned. She looked up. "How dare you interfere in my affairs? You." Suddenly, her expression changed. "It's not Tendo." As if she had thought of something, she suddenly stopped and looked at Yi Xian. "There's something that doesn't want me to read your fortune," Yi Xian said in a deep voice. "Who is it? So domineering." Mu Nanji shook his head. "I don't know, but he should be very strong." Yi Xian said, "You're so powerful, can you forcibly calculate it?" Mu Nanji thought for a moment, then nodded. "I'll give it a try." As soon as she finished speaking, she waved her right hand, and a wave of energy shot into the sky. In the next moment, the pressure in the sky was instantly erased. Mu Nanji continued. Soon, a screen appeared above Yi Xian's head. This time, the image was clearer. In the image was a mountain range, and in the sky, countless demon beasts were wreaking havoc. At this time, Mu Nanji suddenly raised his head. In the next moment, a mysterious energy suddenly appeared above Yi Xian's head. Boom! The image above Yi Xian's head instantly disappeared without a trace. Yi Xian. Mu Nanji's face sank slightly. Yi Xian looked at Mu Nanji. "Can it still be read?" Mu Nanji shook her head. "If my main body was here I could try. Unfortunately, this is a clone." Saying this, he looked at Yi Xian. "Someone is hiding your fortune. It's very strong." Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Who is helping me hide it?" Mu Nanji smiled. "I don't know about that." Saying this, she turned to look at Tang Yen and the others. Tang Yen quickly bowed respectfully. "Greetings, ancestor." Mu Nanji smiled. "I left this clone here in the hope that when the Tang clan is in danger, I will see if I can save it. If you let me out now, the Tang clan will have no trump card in the future." Tang Yen said in a deep voice, "The invasion of God Nation is the most dangerous moment for the Tang clan." Mu Nanji nodded slightly, and then she looked at the little girl below. At this moment, a white-haired old man suddenly appeared in front of Mu Nanji. The white-haired old man looked at Mu Nanji. "Please enlighten me." Looking at the white-haired old man, Mu Nanji's eyes flashed with surprise. "Emperor Realm. Emperor Realm." Hearing Mu Nanji's words, everyone present was shocked, especially the Star Lord and the others. They hadn't expected that there would be an Emperor Realm expert in God Nation. Mu Nanji smiled. "Emperor Realm. Interesting." As soon as she finished speaking, she raised her hand and slapped. Not far away, the white-haired old man suddenly disappeared. Boom! Under everyone's gaze, the white-haired old man instantly retreated. This time, he retreated more than 1,000 zhang. As soon as he stopped, a powerful force suddenly swept towards him. The white-haired old man's pupils suddenly shrank. He suddenly put his palms together, and the space around him suddenly swelled up. It was forcefully pushed up by his powerful strength. In the next moment, he suddenly punched forward. He didn't use any martial arts, just a simple punch. This punch directly formed a strange vortex in the space in front of him. At this moment, Mu Nanji arrived. Bang! Everyone watched as the space in front of the white-haired old man exploded, and a powerful force swept towards the surroundings. In an instant, the powerful force caused the space in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers to ripple. At this moment, the white-haired old man had retreated more than 3 kilometers. Moreover, his body had completely shattered. The white-haired old man who was in soul form looked towards the distance where Mu Nanji was walking slowly towards him. Tang Yan and the others instantly heaved sighs of relief when they saw this scene. At this time, the 2 old men behind the little girl suddenly appeared in front of Mu Nanji. Looking at Mu Nanji, the 2 old men suddenly drew their swords. OM! 2 sword howls resounded in the sky, and then 2 rays of light flashed through the sky and slashed towards Mu Nanji. 2 Emperor Realm experts. The Star Lord and the others' faces instantly turned extremely unsightly when they saw the 2 old men attack. Not only were they Emperor Realm experts, but they were also peak extraordinary sword saints. It could be said that they were much stronger than the white-haired old man from before. In the sky, Mu Nanji's face was expressionless as she pointed forward lightly. Split! As soon as she spoke, the 2 rays of light actually split bit by bit until they turned into nothingness. The 2 old men's faces instantly sank when they saw this. Mu Nanji was about to attack again when she suddenly frowned, because she noticed that her body was becoming more and more illusory. At this moment, she recalled that she was only a clone, and she couldn't consume too much energy. Tang Yan and the others noticed this as well, and their faces turned extremely unsightly. If Mu Nanji disappeared, then who could resist the experts of the divine nation? Suddenly, Mu Nanji looked down at the little girl. The little girl's face was expressionless. Do you want to kill me? Mu Nanji smiled. No. The little girl glanced at Mu Nanji. Why? Mu Nanji laughed. Because you can't. But I want to see your true strength. As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly shot towards the little girl below under everyone's gazes. Not far away, the 2 old men's faces changed drastically. They were about to attack, but the little girl stopped them. The little girl looked up at the charging Mu Nanji, and in the next moment, she suddenly drew her sword. Bas! A ray of sword light soared into the sky. Boom! In the sky, the sword light instantly shattered, and Mu Nanji was already in front of the little girl. At this moment, all the experts of the divine nation were shocked. However, no one dared to move, because Mu Nanji was too close to the little girl. Mu Nanji looked at the little girl in front of her, but she didn't attack again. Instead, she smiled faintly. A genius. As soon as she finished speaking, her body became more and more illusory. Soon, Mu Nanji completely disappeared before everyone's eyes. Seeing this scene, the expressions of the Star Lord and the others in the sky instantly became extremely unsightly. Mu Nanji couldn't kill the ruler of the divine nation. Below, their army was already being crushed by the divine nation. Whether it was the Tang clan's cavalry, the divine Dao army, or the lawful alliance's enforcers, they were all completely suppressed. Moreover, there were countless casualties. At this moment, the little girl suddenly waved her right hand. Kill them all. As soon as she finished speaking, dozens of afterimages suddenly leaped out from the surrounding space. In the next moment, screams resounded incessantly from below. Instant kill. Wherever these afterimages passed, blood splattered everywhere. Seeing this scene, the Star Lord and the others were horrified. Because even the Tang clan cavalry and the divine Dao army were instantly killed by these afterimages. All of them were instantly killed. They couldn't resist at all. Not only that, but countless experts suddenly appeared in the sky. These were the experts of the clans and sects. Crushed. At this moment, the divine nation had completely crushed the other 3 desolate worlds in terms of both numbers and strength. The little girl slowly walked towards the Great Wall. Screams resounded all around her. On the mountain in the distance, Yi Xian looked down in silence. At this moment, Zhao Mu was about to make a move. Yi Xian suddenly said, "What's the point of making a move?" Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian said softly, "We can't stop them." The divine nation was unstoppable. No one could stop the little girl's footsteps. At this moment in the sky, the Star-Lord suddenly said, "Let me do it." As soon as he finished speaking, he opened his palm, and a black diagram suddenly flew into the sky. This diagram expanded with the wind, and in an instant, the entire diagram covered the entire sky. The sky instantly darkened. Countless bolts of black lightning flashed within the map. Everyone looked up at the map. Bolts of lightning flashed wildly within the map. Soon, the lightning suddenly fell towards the divine nation experts below. The Lawful Alliance's ultimate treasure. The star map. This map surpassed the Tao realm and was one of the Lawful Alliance's trump cards. At this moment, the little girl suddenly turned her head. Not far behind her, a golden spear suddenly appeared. The next moment, the spear turned into a beam of golden light that shot into the sky. In front of everyone's eyes, the spear directly pierced the map. Rumble! The sky shook violently and the star map instantly cracked. Seeing this scene, the Star-Lord's expression changed drastically. He quickly put away the star map. The little girl coldly looked at the Star-Lord. "I don't want to see these 5 people in half an hour." As her voice fell, several powerful auras suddenly rushed towards the Star-Lord and the others. Emperor Realm experts. All of them were Emperor Realm experts. In the sky, the Demon King suddenly roared, "Summon the soul of the former king!" As his voice fell, countless demonic beasts in the mountains suddenly roared in unison. In the next moment, a beam of light shot into the sky. Within that beam of light, a middle-aged man quietly appeared. Nanming Demon King. Half human, half demon. The most stunning Demon King in the history of the demon race. The little girl stopped and looked at Nanming Demon King. At this moment, Nanming Demon King suddenly looked at Yi Xian, who was not far to his right. To be more precise, he was looking at Yi Xian's abdomen. Looking at Yi Xian's abdomen, Nanming Demon King narrowed his eyes. "Such a supreme treasure is actually on you." As his voice fell, a powerful aura suddenly shrouded Yi Xian. Seeing this, Yi Xian's expression changed. Mother****, is he trying to mess with me? P.S. Counting with my fingers, there will be a large number of monthly votes today. Chapter 6:18. At this moment, everyone's gaze fell on Yi Xian. Treasure. It was no secret that Yi Xian had a 5th-dimensional treasure. However, no one expected that Nanming Demon King would take a fancy to Yi Xian's treasure. Yi Xian was out of luck. Some experts revealed expressions of schadenfreude, especially the Star-Lord. Although he was facing a great enemy, he was happy to see Yi Xian die. Could Yi Xian stop Nanming Demon King? He definitely could not. After all, Nanming Demon King was an expert on the same level as Mu Nanji. Although it was only a clone, it was not something that Yi Xian could contend with. Nanming Demon King looked at Yi Xian with a fiery gaze. He was about to speak when an illusory Xiao Ta appeared in Yi Xian's palm. In the next moment, Yi Xian threw the prison pagoda to the side. It landed in front of the little girl. Everyone. The little girl looked at the prison pagoda expressionlessly. At this moment, Nanming Demon King's gaze fell on the little girl. In the sky, the Star-Lord's expression became extremely gloomy. He did not expect Yi Xian to be so decisive and directly hand over the treasure. Not only did this perfectly resolve his crisis, but it also successfully attracted Nanming Demon King's attention to the divine nation. Misfortune was diverted. Yi Xian's expression was calm, and no one could tell that he was angry. Not far away, the little girl looked at the prison pagoda. In the end, she opened her palm and the prison pagoda landed in her palm. 5th-dimensional treasure? Nangong Wan, who was standing beside the little girl, nodded. This should be the treasure from the 5th dimension. The little girl lightly pointed at the prison pagoda and said softly, "Interesting." At this moment, a pressure suddenly enveloped the little girl. She looked up, and in the next moment, a ray of sword light directly crushed the pressure. Seeing this scene, Demon Monarch Nanming narrowed his eyes. Sword God. The little girl ignored the Nanming Demon Monarch and continued to examine the World Prison Pagoda in her hands. Her eyes were filled with curiosity. At this moment, Nanming Demon King took a step forward and looked down at the little girl. "Are you going to hand it over yourself, or do you want me to kill you and take it for myself?" Hearing that, The little girl looked up at Nanming Demon Monarch. Who do you think you are? As soon as she finished speaking, she suddenly soared into the sky. Buzz! A sword cry tore through the sky. Everyone looked up. In the air, Nanming Demon King squinted his eyes. He had not expected this little girl to take the initiative. His gaze turned cold, and in the next instant, a powerful pressure pressed down from above. Chi! A tearing sound suddenly resounded in the sky. In the next moment, the space in an area of tens of thousands of kilometers trembled violently. At this moment, the little girl had already returned to her original position. The sky had also returned to normal. Nanming Demon King was still standing there, but at this moment, his body was completely illusory, almost transparent to the point of being invisible. Seeing this scene, the demon monarch's face instantly turned ugly. In the air, Nanming Demon King stared at the little girl below. Genius! As soon as he finished speaking, he disappeared completely. After Nanming Demon King disappeared, the little girl below looked up at the Star-Lord and the others in the sky. Kill! In the next moment, several powerful auras shot towards the Star-Lord and the others. Seeing this scene, the faces of the Star-Lord and the others changed. They were only at the Tendo realm, but the ones attacking them were all at the Emperor realm. How could they resist? There was no way to resist. At this moment the Star-Lord suddenly said, Sir, I am willing to surrender. Surrender! Surrender! As soon as this was said, everyone was shocked and looked at the Star-Lord. Even perfected Master Chu and the rest were in disbelief. Obviously, they did not expect the Star-Lord to choose to surrender. At this moment, the Star-Lord suddenly appeared in front of the little girl. He knelt down on one knee. I am willing to pledge my loyalty to you, sir. Everyone present. Yi Xian also did not expect the Star-Lord to surrender directly, and kneel down to surrender. What was he playing at? Not far away, the little girl walked in front of the Star-Lord. Too late. As soon as her voice fell, the Star-Lord's face changed instantly. He retreated frantically, and then under everyone's shocked gaze, he escaped just like that. An old man beside the little girl wanted to give chase, but the little girl shook her head. No need. Following the Star-Lord's escape, the morale of the Great Wall instantly fell to the bottom. How could they fight? The dignified Star-Lord actually fled just like that. How could they fight? Soon more and more people fled. However, the little girl did not let these people go. Instead, she chose to kill them all. Not far away, Yi Xian said in a low voice, She wants to cleanse. Zhao Mu looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said in a low voice, Leaving these people alive is an unstable factor, and they are not easy to tame. Killing them directly is more beneficial to the rule of the God Nation. This little girl is really ruthless. Little girl? Zhao Mu's expression was quite strange. In the void, after the Star-Lord fled, the Monster King also immediately turned and left. At the same time, the countless monster army retreated like the tide. At this time a voice rang out in the sky. Retreat! The Divine Tao Army's commander. Yi Zhantian. As soon as Yi Zhantian's voice fell, all the Divine Tao Army retreated. The little girl looked at the commander of the guards not far away. Chase them, don't leave any alive. The commander bowed respectfully, then led the guards in pursuit of the Divine Tao Lords. The rest of the God Nation powerhouses also chased after those who fled. Kill them all. In the void, Tang Yen also left with the Tang clan powerhouses. Only perfected Chu and the Southern Sect Martial Master were left. The two looked at each other, then turned and left. After using all their trump cards, they could see no hope. They could not stop this God Nation. Forcibly resisting now would only be suicide. Beside Yi Xian, Zhao Mu glanced at Yi Xian, then turned and left. The Southern Sect Martial Master told her to leave. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Miss Zhao, are you going to leave just like that? Zhao Mu did not answer. Yi Xian said again, Will you miss me? Zhao Mu turned and looked coldly at Yi Xian, then made a throat-slitting gesture. Yi Xian. Soon, Zhao Mu left, but before she left behind a bottle of medicine for healing. Yi Xian looked at the medicine in his hand and smiled. At this time, his expression suddenly changed, and he turned around. In front of him stood a little girl. It was the Divine Master of God Nation. The little girl looked at Yi Xian, but did not say anything. Yi Xian hesitated, then said, Can you return the pagoda to me? The little girl looked at the world prison pagoda in her palm, then looked at Yi Xian. You gave it to me. Yi Xian said in a low voice. I regret it. The little girl looked at Yi Xian for a long time, then finally, she pointed with a finger, and the world prison pagoda returned to Yi Xian. Yi Xian was stunned. She really returned it? The little girl was expressionless. It has already recognized you as its master. I do not accept second-hand goods. Yi Xian. The world prison pagoda suddenly shook violently. It felt a great humiliation. Yi Xian hurriedly grabbed the world prison pagoda. Calm down, or you will be beaten. The world prison pagoda was still unwilling. It wanted to charge at the little girl, but Yi Xian held it tightly. The little girl suddenly said, Is it going to beat me? Yi Xian looked at the little girl. She said, Let it come. Yi Xian loosened his grip, but the world prison pagoda did not charge over. It floated in front of Yi Xian, trembling. At this time, Xiao Linger's voice suddenly sounded in Yi Xian's mind. It wants you to hold it back. Yi Xian. Soon, the world prison pagoda was thrown back into Yi Xian's body. This fellow was really too embarrassing. At this time the little girl suddenly said, Your sword. Yi Xian looked at the little girl. My sword. The little girl nodded. Take a look. Yi Xian opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword appeared in his hand. He released his hand, and the executing heaven sword flew in front of the little girl. The little girl sized up the executing heaven sword, then said, Sharp. The executing heaven sword trembled slightly, as if in reply. The little girl took out the sword at her waist, and at this time, the executing heaven sword returned to Yi Xian. The little girl frowned slightly. The executing heaven sword did not seem to like her sword. The little girl looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian looked at the sword in his hand. The executing heaven sword trembled, then returned to Yi Xian's body. Yi Xian looked at the little girl. It means that everything in the past is in the past. It does not want to recall the past. At this point, he looked at the executing heaven sword in his hand. This was a sword with a story. The little girl nodded slightly, and did not say anything else. At this time, Yi Xian suddenly said, Can you show me your sword? The little girl loosened her grip, and the sword in her hand flew in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian sized up the sword in his hand. It looked very ordinary, but it contained a mysterious power. Yi Xian looked at the little girl and asked, What sword is this? The little girl shook her head. It came to my side when I was born. Yi Xian had a strange expression on his face. What was this? Did this sword come by itself? Yi Xian carefully sized up the sword in his hand, and then said, Are you interested in following me? The little girl. At this time, the sword in his hand suddenly flew away, and it flew in front of the little girl, trembling slightly. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. It said that you are thick-skinned. Yi Xian. At this time the little girl turned to leave, but she soon stopped and looked at Yi Xian. You are the city lord of Divine Martial City? Yi Xian nodded. The little girl said, 3 days later, my people will enter Divine Martial City to take over. At that time, you can choose to accept or reject. Yi Xian said in a low voice. Is there no room for negotiation? The little girl shook her head. No. Yi Xian nodded. Then send someone powerful, or I won't be able to kill to my heart's content. The little girl said softly. As you wish. After saying that, she disappeared not far away. At this time, a woman appeared in front of Yi Xian. It was Xueqi. Xueqi looked at Yi Xian and blinked. Your sword, can I see it too? Yi Xian shook his head decisively. No. Xueqi said angrily. Why? Yi Xian was expressionless. If I show it to you, will you return it? After saying that, he turned to leave. Xueqi suddenly blocked in front of Yi Xian, and she looked at Yi Xian and said seriously, Swordsman, tell me, as long as I become as shameless as you, will I get a lot of treasures? Yi Xian. Chapter 619. Yi Xian ignored the woman. She was too annoying. However, Xueqi kept chasing him. Swordsman, compensate me with a knife. I don't even have a knife to use. Yi Xian stopped. You want to kill me? Xueqi said seriously. I don't want to kill you now. Yi Xian asked. Why? Xueqi thought about it and said, I can't kill you. The corner of Yi Xian's mouth twitched. So, if you could kill me you would, wouldn't you? Xueqi glanced at Yi Xian. Don't you think you deserve a beating? Yi Xian shook his head. He ignored the woman and turned to leave. This woman was too powerful. Yi Xian moved quickly and disappeared into the horizon in the blink of an eye. At this time the woman's voice came from behind. You can't run. I'm going to Shenwu City to find you. Yi Xian. As the Great Wall's Order Alliance, Monster Clan, and Tang Clan fled, the Kingdom of God's army marched straight in. It was worth mentioning that the Kingdom of God's army didn't massacre or even rob along the way. However, every city and sect had a new master. This time, the Kingdom of God didn't wipe them out. As long as they surrendered, they were not killed. As for those who resisted, there was basically no resistance because the Kingdom of God was too powerful. So powerful that it made people despair. After the Kingdom of God took over many places, they immediately began to reform. At the same time, powerful forces from the Kingdom of God appeared in the 3 desolate worlds. In the Kingdom of God, there were 36 sects and 10 aristocratic families. The top ones were the Confucian Institution, the Military School, and the School of Vertical and Horizontal. The Confucian Institution, the Military School, and the School of Vertical and Horizontal had their own orthodoxies. In the Kingdom of God they were very powerful, but even they had to submit to the God Lord of the Kingdom of God. Many disciples of these 3 schools were also serving the kingdom. Now, the Kingdom of God was in conflict, but it was also very united. In particular, the dispatch of troops this time was unanimously agreed by all the forces in the Kingdom of God. Many old monsters from the Divine Kingdom had yet to appear. Even though the Divine Nation had entered 3 deserted worlds, the Order Alliance, the Tang Clan, and the Demon Clan had not been completely destroyed. However, they had sent their armies to fight. Everyone knew that the Chaosverse was truly going to be unified. After Yi Xian left the Great Wall, he directly rode his sword to Ascending Heaven City. Some debts needed to be settled. When he arrived at Heaven Ascension City, there was not a single soul in the city. All of them escaped? Yi Xian frowned. When he entered the city, it was completely empty. There was nothing at all. Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. His spiritual consciousness swept across the entire city, and soon, he disappeared from the spot. Not long after, Yi Xian arrived in front of a large hall where a person was sitting. Star-Lord. Yi Xian looked at the Star-Lord. Waiting for me? The Star-Lord nodded. He got up and walked not far from Yi Xian. He sized up Yi Xian and said, Yi Xian, I have to say, you are indeed outstanding. Yi Xian nodded. After knowing you for so long, you finally said something sensible. The Star-Lord shook his head. I have to say, coveting this treasure of yours was indeed my biggest mistake. However, I had no other choice. Yi Xian took out a divine crystal and swallowed it. Are you sure you want to talk? I am a straightforward person and I will not beat around the bush. Right now, I have not fully recovered. The Star-Lord smiled. Feel free to swallow it. If I am still afraid of fighting you, then I really have lived all these years in vain. Yi Xian nodded. Then I won't be polite. With that, he took out another pile of divine crystals and began to swallow. At this time, an old man holding a sword suddenly appeared not far away. A Divine Nation expert. Obviously, this Divine Nation did not intend to let the Star-Lord go. Yi Xian looked at the old man holding the sword. Senior, can you let me fight him? If I die, oh no, if I can't win, can you make your move? The old man looked at Yi Xian and did not speak. He looked at the Star-Lord and the latter smiled. Sir, since I can't run away, how about you let me fight him? The old man retreated to the side. Obviously, he agreed. The Star-Lord looked at Yi Xian. Do you know how long I have been in the Tendo realm? Yi Xian shook his head. The Star-Lord said, 300 years. I have been trapped in the Tendo realm for 300 years. Yi Xian asked, So you are eyeing my treasure? The Star-Lord said softly, Yi Xian, tell me the truth. The reason why you are so monstrous is because of that treasure, right? Yi Xian was a little unhappy. Could it be that other than this treasure, I, Yi Xian, am useless? The Star-Lord laughed. I forgot. You still have a very strong point, which is your thick skin. Shameless enough. Haha. Yi Xian said calmly, Star-Lord, even if you get that treasure you can't improve. The Star Lord asked. Why? Yi Xian said, because this treasure can't help people improve, at least not now. That's right. I obtained some opportunities because of this treasure. But that's because I, Yi Xian, have a strong and unreasonable sword immortal sister. Otherwise, I would have died many times. These were his heartfelt words. If it wasn't for the plain-dressed woman, he would have died many times. But he still did not understand why the plain-dressed woman was so good to him. Was it because he was too handsome? Thinking of this, Yi Xian blushed. Was he too narcissistic? At this moment, the Star Lord suddenly asked, "The sword immortal sister you mentioned is the person behind you?" Yi Xian nodded. Yes. The Star Lord said softly, "So strong that she is unreasonable." Yi Xian smiled. "Star Lord, we can start." At this moment, he had completely recovered. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian and nodded slightly. "Let me see how monstrous you are after becoming a transcendent sword saint." As his voice fell, he slowly clenched his right hand. In an instant, a powerful force quietly gathered in his fist. Yi Xian opened his palm and the executing heaven sword appeared in his palm. The next moment, the power of the earth began to gather towards him at an extremely fast speed. Almost in an instant, the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins within a radius of tens of thousands of miles were all absorbed by him. Not far away, the old man holding the sword glanced at Yi Xian. Great Tao Law. The endless Great Tao Law began to gather towards Yi Xian, and in Yi Xian's hand, the executing heaven sword began to vibrate violently. The Star Lord looked at Yi Xian, and the next moment, he suddenly disappeared. Boom! A powerful force suddenly swept towards Yi Xian. The force was so strong that it directly caused the entire city to collapse inch by inch. Yi Xian looked in front of him and said softly, "This sword is for you on behalf of Senior Wu Wan and Senior Yu." As his voice fell, he suddenly leaped forward and slashed with the sword in both hands. Behind him, the power of the earth and the power of the earth veins gathered into his body like a golden dragon, and then poured out along his executing heaven sword. The sword fell. Boom! A silhouette suddenly flew out. It was Yi Xian. Not far away, the old man shook his head. The difference in cultivation level was too great. At this moment, his expression suddenly changed. He looked at the position where the Star Lord was standing not far away, and the space there suddenly began to strangely slice. Chi 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 chi. A series of densely packed cutting sounds rang out. Spatial laceration. The sword-hugging elder narrowed his eyes. This spatial laceration was not an external laceration, but a laceration of spatial attributes. This was extremely terrifying. At that moment, the elder suddenly turned his head to look at Yi Xian, who was not far away. There, a sword in Yi Xian's hand suddenly flew towards Confucius. The next moment, the sword pointed at where the planet lord was. Bas! A sword cry suddenly shook the heavens and earth. Soul-suppressing sword. Soul-splitting sword. The elder with the sword immediately turned his head to look at the position of the Star Lord. There, the space was trembling. Soon, the space returned to normal. At this moment, the Star Lord appeared in front of Yi Xian and the elder. At this moment, the Star Lord's face was abnormally pale. Not only that, there were more than 10 sword scars around his body. But he was still alive. In the distance, Yi Xian's expression darkened. At this time, Soul's voice sounded in his mind. "Young lord, his soul is too strong, I can't separate it." Yi Xian nodded. "Don't worry, leave the rest to me." As he spoke, he looked at the Star Lord not far away. At this moment, the Star Lord's eyes were slightly closed. His soul would leave his body from time to time, but it would quickly return to his body. In the end, his soul returned to normal. The Star Lord opened his eyes and looked at Yi Xian. "That sword of yours is really strange." Yi Xian smiled. "Unfortunately, it's useless against you." The Star Lord shook his head. "If your realm was a little higher, I wouldn't be able to withstand it." As he spoke, he slowly walked towards Yi Xian. "If you don't have any other trump cards, then you might die." Yi Xian smiled. "I still have one trump card." The Star Lord nodded. "Let's try." Yi Xian smiled slightly. The next moment, he took a step forward, and a red glow swept out from his body. Bloodline power. In fact, he didn't really want to use this bloodline power, but at this moment, he had no choice. If he didn't use the bloodline power, he couldn't kill this Star Lord. As for the after effects of this bloodline power, he didn't care so much. Now, he just wanted to kill the person in front of him. As the bloodline power was activated, rays of red light constantly vibrated out from his body. At the same time, the power of the surrounding earth veins once again gathered towards him. Not only that, this time, he directly used the dragon soul force and dragon power. At this moment, his aura skyrocketed to an extremely terrifying level. Especially the bloodline power. The power of this bloodline power was too terrifying. In addition, he was also madly absorbing the surrounding power of space, and the surrounding space began to squeeze towards the Star-Lord layer by layer. The Star-Lord narrowed his eyes, slowly clenching his fists. Soon, a powerful aura constantly vibrated out from his body, and the surrounding space rippled, extremely terrifying. Yi Xian suddenly disappeared. Chi! A ray of red sword light flashed across the field. Not far away, the Star-Lord also suddenly disappeared. There was a moment of silence. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion suddenly sounded, following which, the entire ascending heaven city began to collapse and be annihilated. At this time, countless flying swords suddenly appeared in the field, crisscrossing, and at the same time, the surrounding space began to cut. Just like this, it continued for about 15 minutes before the surroundings gradually calmed down. Yi Xian stood on the spot, blood constantly flowing out from the corner of his mouth, but very quickly, the blood was absorbed by him. And not far away, the Star-Lord's physical body had already been destroyed. But his soul was still there. The Star-Lord looked at Yi Xian and said softly, "Spending such a great price, just to destroy my physical body? Then do you know that I only need half a quarter of an hour to condense a new physical body?" At this time not far away, Yi Xian suddenly disappeared, and the next moment, a sword light slashed over. Soul-suppressing sword plus soul-setting sword. The Star-Lord's face instantly changed. At this moment, he knew why Yi Xian wanted to destroy his physical body at all costs. This sword plus this sword skill, his soul could not block it at all. The Star-Lord suddenly laughed out loud. "Good one, Yi Xian." As his voice fell, his soul suddenly exploded. Rumble! Yi Xian was instantly sent flying thousands of feet away, and finally heavily smashed onto the ground. But very quickly, Yi Xian stood up. After the Star-Lord's soul self-destructed, he immediately looked at the sword-hugging elder not far away, and then he walked towards the sword-hugging elder with his sword. Killing intent. At this moment, he wanted to kill someone. The sword-hugging elder looked at Yi Xian and said indifferently, "You better calm down." Yi Xian suddenly roared, "I also want to calm down, but I can't control myself." Ah! As his voice fell, he directly rushed towards the sword-hugging elder. P.S. Too tired. I want to take a leave. I want to take 2 days to not write, and sleep until I wake up naturally. Is there anyone who can provide for me? Just provide meals. Chapter 6:20. The old man had an emotionless expression on his face as he watched Yi Xian charge towards him. Needless to say, Yi Xian really was very strong because he was able to kill a Star-Lord. However, he wasn't someone that a Star-Lord could compare to. He wasn't just a true emperor, he was an extraordinary sword saint as well. Regardless of whether it was in terms of cultivation or the sword Dao, he crushed Yi Xian. At this moment, Yi Xian wanted to stop as well. He really wanted to stop, but his body wasn't under his control. Or it should be said that the killing intent in his mind had suppressed his reason. His bloodline would affect his mind, and it would affect him greatly. He wasn't able to control himself at all. It didn't take long for Yi Xian to arrive in front of the old man, and the old man suddenly attacked. OM! A sword howl tore through the air, and then a ray of light flashed. It was an extremely swift attack. Not too far away. Bang! Yi Xian swiftly drew his sword and slashed as well. But it only took a moment for his figure to be blasted flying along with his sword, and he flew over 1 kilometer away. On the ground, Yi Xian's body twitched for a while. However, he slowly stood up and walked towards the old man holding the sword. He walked very slowly, but the killing intent he emanated didn't weaken at all, and it grew stronger instead. The old man's eyes narrowed slightly while killing intent arose within them. The sword in his hand started to tremble and emanated a light sword howl. Suddenly, a little girl appeared in front of the old man. It was Xueqi. Xueqi bowed slightly to the old man. "Greetings, Grandpa Xueqi." The old man called Xueqi glanced at Xueqi, and then his expression gradually eased up. "It's you." Xueqi grinned. "Grandpa Xiang, give him to me, all right?" Xueqi gazed at Yixian. "Him?" Xueqi nodded. "Yes." Xueqi shook his head. "He's dangerous." Xueqi spoke seriously. "He's crippled now, so he's not a match for me at all." When she spoke up to this point, she hesitated for a moment and said, "He stole my saber in the past. I want to take revenge on him." Xueqi looked at Xueqi and said, "If you didn't have those evil thoughts, you would have been on the divine list long ago." Xueqi blinked. "Haven't I done it yet?" Xueqi was speechless. "Don't you know it yourself?" Xueqi said in a low voice. "I thought I was the one." Xueqi. At this time, Xueqi said again, "It doesn't matter if you go or not. In this god nation, who doesn't know of me? Heroine Zhua?" Xueqi smiled. "I still have things to do, so I won't talk nonsense with you. Remember, this person is dangerous. Be careful. It's best to cripple him first." With that, he turned and disappeared into the horizon. Xueqi quickly said, "Grandpa Xiang, don't you want his black Xiao Ta?" A voice came from the distant horizon. "I'm a swordsman. My sword is enough. Why do I need anything else?" Below, Xueqi looked at the horizon and softly said, "Thank goodness I'm not a swordsman." With that, she turned and looked at Yixian not far away. At this moment, Yixian had already walked a few dozen feet in front of her. Looking at Yixian, Xueqi smiled. The next moment, she stepped forward and punched Yixian's face. Bang! Yixian instantly fell to the ground. At the same time, his face swelled up. Xueqi grabbed Yixian's foot and walked into the distance. Soon, she dragged Yixian and disappeared at the end of the horizon. At the end of the horizon, Xueqi's strange laughter could be heard from time to time. Order City, at the city gate, a little girl stood quietly. This person was God Nation's sovereign. Behind the little girl were many God Nation's powerhouses. Looking at the Order City, the little girl said softly, "We'll settle here for the time being." At this time, Nangongwan suddenly said, "Your Majesty, the Order Alliance and Tang Clan have fled to the Full Sky Sea. There's no movement from the monster race, and there's no movement from God Marshal City." The little girl said softly, "Send people to hunt them down. We must kill them all." Nangongwan wanted to say something but stopped. The little girl said, "Speak your mind." Nangongwan bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, we have occupied 3 deserted worlds. Now is not the time to kill." The little girl said, "Continue." Nangongwan said, "We need to win the hearts of the people. If we continue to suppress them with iron blood, many people will feel uneasy, especially the forces from the small worlds. Everyone will feel insecure. This is not our original intention. Of course, we cannot let the stubborn forces like the Order Alliance go unchecked. However, if they are willing to surrender, we can let bygones be bygones. Only then will many people not resist stubbornly." The little girl was silent. Nangongwan said again, "Your Majesty, conquering the world is easy, but governing it is difficult, especially when the chaotic universe is so vast. Therefore, we must use both carrot and stick. We must use iron blood, but we must also be merciful." The little girl nodded. "Yes." Nangongwan relaxed. "Then I will go and do it." Speaking of this, she seemed to have thought of something and said, "Should we send troops to suppress God Marshal City?" The little girl shook her head. "I will go myself." Saying this, she turned to look at the horizon. "I once heard from my master that the patriarch of the sword sect is an incredible person. I want to see him." Nangongwan nodded. "Understood." Saying this, she quietly retreated. The little girl suddenly said, "Have Elder Lu of the Confucian Institution, Elder Han of the military school, and Elder Wang of the School of Vertical and Horizontal come see me." Behind her, a man quietly retreated. The little girl walked into the city. The streets were deserted. Although there were people around, they were all hiding. The little girl walked to the city lord's palace. At this moment, the entire place was deserted. There was not a single person. The little girl walked to a stone table and sat down. Suddenly, 3 old men appeared in front of her. These 3 were Master Lu Fu of the Confucian Institution, Han Yuzi of the military school, and Wang Jingji of the School of Vertical and Horizontal. The 3 bowed to the little girl. After the 3 bowed, the little girl bowed back. This was respect. The little girl sat down and gestured for them to sit. The 3 old men sat down. The little girl softly said, "Speak." Master Lu Fu softly said, "We want to establish our orthodoxy in various places." The little girl said, "The world is very large, and it is easy for it to fall into chaos. Do you understand what I mean?" Master Lu Fu smiled. "Of course. Rest assured, we are like this in the Divine Kingdom, and we will do the same here. We will not allow this world to fall into chaos again." The little girl looked at Master Lu Fu. "First there is a country, then there is a home. No matter how you preach, you must remember this." Saying this, she stood up and left. Where they stood, the 3 looked at each other and smiled.
Master Lu Fu suddenly whispered, "Although this godlord of ours is young, her heart is not small."
Han Yuzi smiled. "Among the godlords of our divine kingdom, which one is a simple character?" Wang Jingji faintly smiled. "In truth, this isn't a bad thing." Master Lu Fu nodded. "If a godlord isn't strong enough, the primal chaos universe will instantly fall into chaos." Wang Jingji and Han Yuzi nodded. "If this godlord isn't monstrous enough, it can be said that the divine kingdom will instantly fall apart. Once that happens, the entire primal chaos universe will fall into endless chaos." At this time, a guard suddenly appeared in front of the 3. The guard bowed slightly. His Majesty said that we still have an enemy we haven't dealt with. Hearing this, the 3's expressions became solemn. There is an even stronger enemy that has yet to be dealt with. Somewhere in a dense forest, Xueqi dragged Yi Xian slowly through the forest. Today, Xueqi was especially happy. The smile on her face was like a blooming flower. She finally caught this shameless swordsman. Xueqi dragged Yi Xian for a long time. Finally, she arrived in front of a pool of water. She placed Yi Xian on the ground and began to take off Yi Xian's clothes. Chapter 621. Where's the treasure? Xueqi had stripped Yi Xian naked, but she still could not find Yi Xian's treasure. Looking at the naked Yi Xian in front of her, Xueqi knitted her eyebrows tightly. Somewhat displeased, she lowered her head to look at Yi Xian. At the moment, Yi Xian seemed to have fallen into a coma. Xueqi kicked Yi Xian's butt lightly.
"Shameless swordsman, where's your treasure?"
Yi Xian was speechless. Seeing that Yi Xian had no reaction, Xueqi kicked him again. However, there was still no reaction. Xueqi frowned slightly. She squatted down and patted Yi Xian's face lightly.
"Shameless swordsman, wake up."
However, Yi Xian still did not move. Xueqi said softly, "He's probably injured." She pondered for a moment before adding, "Looks like I'll have to treat his injuries first." Treat his injuries. Xueqi brought Yi Xian away. About half an hour later, Xueqi brought Yi Xian to a mountain range. There was a sect from God Nation on this mountain range. The Medicine King sect. The Medicine King sect was not the most powerful force in God Nation. However, this sect was a little special. This was because this sect specialized in refining elixirs. These elixirs were good stuff. They could be used to treat injuries, nourish the soul, and nourish the body. Better elixirs could even help a person improve. Some special elixirs could even change a person's physique and achieve the effect of marrow cleansing. Because of this, the Medicine King sect had a special status in God Nation. There were too many powerful forces that needed to purchase elixirs from them. In addition, the sect leader of the Medicine King sect held a position in the God Nation's palace. Therefore, although the Medicine King sect's combat power was not strong, its influence was huge. Most people did not dare to provoke them. Xueqi brought Yi Xian towards the top of the mountain. Along the way, many women passed by. However, when they saw Yi Xian, their faces blushed and they hurriedly walked away. Soon, the Medicine King sect was shaken. The disciples of the Medicine King sect were mostly female. Because of this, Xueqi had brought along a naked Yi Xian and strutted around the mountain, causing quite a stir. At this moment, a woman suddenly walked in front of Xueqi. She glanced at Xueqi and was a little displeased.
Heroine Xue, who is this person you brought along? Xueqi said. A shameless swordsman.
The woman glanced at Yi Xian and blushed. You're a swordsman. Then why didn't you help him get dressed? Xueqi shook her head. Troublesome. After that, she continued to drag Yi Xian up the mountain. As if she had thought of something, she turned to look at the woman. Is Lunatic Kai here? The woman replied. Senior Sister Kai is planting spirit herbs at the top of the mountain. Xueqi nodded and dragged Yi Xian up the mountain. At this moment, the woman followed beside Xueqi. If you don't help him get dressed, he'll be so embarrassed when he wakes up. Xueqi said seriously, he's very thick-skinned. He won't care at all. The woman was speechless. At this moment, Xueqi added, I only know how to strip. The woman was speechless. After a while, Xueqi brought Yi Xian to the top of the mountain. At the top of the mountain, many people were building a palace. On the other side, a woman was planting spirit herbs in a courtyard. The woman looked to be in her 20s and wore a simple cotton dress. She had a small scythe hanging from her waist and was currently using a small hoe to dig a hole. Xueqi brought Yi Xian behind the woman and said, Lunatic Kai, help me save this person. The woman did not even turn her head. No. Xueqi was expressionless. This person has a lot of treasures on him. The woman turned around. When she saw Yi Xian, she was slightly stunned. This is the Shenwu city lord, Yi Xian? Xueqi looked at Lunatic Kai in surprise. You know him? Lunatic Kai walked in front of Yi Xian and looked at Yi Xian. I heard that he has a fifth-dimensional treasure on him. Xueqi quickly nodded. Yes, he has a lot of treasures on him. However, I don't know where he hid them. I searched for a long time but couldn't find him. Lunatic Kai squatted in front of Yi Xian and placed her right hand on Yi Xian's abdomen. After a while she said softly, his internal organs are damaged and the blood vessels in his body are still boiling. Bury him. Xueqi hesitated and said, I think he can still be saved. Let's try. Lunatic Kai looked at Xueqi. I need money to save him. Xueqi hurriedly pointed at Yi Xian. He doesn't have anything but money. After saving him, we'll divide him. Xueqi thought for a while and said, Okay. After saying that, she took out a white jade bottle and poured out a thumb-sized medicinal pill. The medicinal pill was pure white and emitted a sweet fragrance. Lunatic Kai fed the medicinal pill to Yi Xian. Soon, a light green energy suddenly spread out from Yi Xian's body. After a while, Yi Xian's body started to tremble. Xueqi quickly asked, What's wrong? Lunatic Kai touched Yi Xian's body and said, His blood swallowed my medicinal pill. Xueqi replied with an "Oh" and said, Continue feeding. Lunatic Kai looked at Xueqi. It's very expensive. Xueqi said seriously, he's the city lord of Shenwu City. Do you think he lacks money? Moreover, he has a lot of treasures on him. Lunatic Kai thought for a moment and continued feeding Yi Xian. Just like that, around an hour later, Yi Xian's injuries started to slowly recover. Meanwhile, Yi Xian suddenly opened his eyes, and they were completely blood red. Xueqi's eyelids twitched when she saw this. How terrifying! Meanwhile, Lunatic Kai suddenly rubbed a silver needle between Yi Xian's brows. Xueqi looked at Lunatic Kai. What are you doing? Lunatic Kai said in a low voice, his killing intent is too strong. It's because of his bloodline. This needle of mine has temporarily suppressed his bloodline. Xueqi asked, Can he wake up? Lunatic Kai said softly, It's up to him. Right at this moment, Xiao Ling suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian. Xueqi and Lunatic Noodle were stunned when they saw Xiao Ling Xiao Ling glanced at the two women, and then looked at Yi Xian. When Yi Xian was injured, the prison pagoda was affected and closed, so she couldn't come out at all. But now, after Lunatic Kai fed Yi Xian a pill, Yi Xian's body recovered a little, and the prison pagoda was opened again. Lunatic Kai suddenly said, She's the spirit of the source. The spirit of the source. Xueqi's eyes lit up when she heard this, and she looked at Xiao Ling with surprise. She really is the spirit of the source. Xiao Ling glanced at the two women, and her face was expressionless. You're actually humans. How rare. The two women were speechless. Xiao Ling looked at Yi Xian, and then she took out many spirit fruits to feed Yi Xian. Seeing these spirit fruits, Lunatic Kai's eyes lit up. Holy spirit fruit, mystical spirit grass, red dragon fruit. Xiao Ling ignored the two women, and continued to feed Yi Xian spirit fruits. At this moment, the prison pagoda suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian, and it quickly trembled, as if it was angry. Xiao Ling glanced at the prison pagoda. He didn't do it on purpose, so why are you angry? The prison pagoda trembled, as if it was saying something. Xiao Ling ignored it, and she continued to feed Yi Xian spirit fruits. At the side, Xueqi and Lunatic Kai's eyes fell on the prison pagoda. A fifth-dimensional treasure. Xueqi's eyes lit up, and Lunatic Kai was a little curious. Regarding this fifth-dimensional treasure, many people in the Divine Nation also knew about it. One had to know that this treasure was not only ranked first here, it was also ranked first in the entire Divine Nation. In God Nation, there was also a God weapon list, which was created by the Heavenly Secret Sect, and the #1 treasure was this fifth-dimensional treasure. This treasure surpassed countless treasures in God Nation. But now, there were 2 more treasures on this God weapon list. Executing Heaven's Sword. And this Executing Heaven's Sword was ranked 3rd. In other words, on the God weapon list, Yi Xian alone occupied 2 treasures. At this moment, Xueqi suddenly said, "Why don't you follow me?" Prison Pagoda. Xiao Ling looked at Xueqi. "It won't follow you." Xueqi was a little confused. "Why?" Xiao Ling said, "Because it's afraid of death." Prison Pagoda. Xueqi blinked her eyes. At this time, the red in Yi Xian's eyes gradually receded, and his consciousness also slowly recovered. After a while, Yi Xian completely recovered his consciousness, and he looked at Xiao Ling softly saying, "Not dead." Beside him, Xueqi hurriedly said, "Shameless swordsman, it was me who saved you." Lunatic Kai said, "Me too." Yi Xian slowly sat up, and at this time, his lower body felt cold. He looked down and was immediately stunned. "Not wearing anything?" Yi Xian looked at Xueqi. "Where are my clothes?" Xueqi hurriedly shook her head. "I don't know." Yi Xian. At this time, Xueqi suddenly said, "Swordsman, I saved you, how are you going to repay me?" Yi Xian took out a set of clothes and put it on, then looked at Xueqi. "Why don't I repay you with my body?" Xueqi glared at Yi Xian. "Shameless swordsman, be a man. How can you be so shameless? I'm your savior, you know. If not for me, you would have been killed by Grandpa Xiangqing." Yi Xian said seriously, "Thank you." These words were from the bottom of her heart. He knew that if not for this woman in front of him, he might really have died. With that said, Yi Xian opened his palm, and a storage ring appeared in his hand. He handed the storage ring to Xueqi. "There are 5 million divinity crystals in there, is that enough?" Xueqi took a look at the storage ring. Then she looked at the prison tower not far away. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. "I can't give it to you. It's true. If it's with you, it might even harm you." Lunatic Kai also said, "He's right." Xueqi thought for a moment then said, "Then pay me back with a saber." "I don't have a saber to use anymore." Yi Xian said, 5 million divinity crystals. Can I buy a Dao Realm saber?" Xueqi nodded. "Yes. But I can only buy a normal one. I want a very, very good one. Is that okay?" Yi Xian asked, "Where can I find one?" Xueqi hurriedly said, "I know a place with a saber on the divine weapon list. I've liked it for a long time. Come, I'll take you to steal it." With that said, she grabbed Yi Xian and ran. Lunatic Kai. P.S. I slept for an entire afternoon yesterday. It felt very comfortable. When I woke up this morning, I finally didn't feel dizzy and sore. Many of the authors you know are slow to update. In fact, most of the reasons are because they can't handle the intense writing. Because we are all slowly growing up, and we no longer have the energy we had when we were young. Sometimes, after writing for an entire day, we feel like our heads don't belong to us anymore. Very few people would be able to experience such a feeling. I am grateful to all the readers who have supported me along the way. I will continue to work hard and update, and I will try to update as much as possible. Keep updating, and steadily update every month. Are there any readers with questions? If there are, I have a physical book here, we can chat privately. Chapter 622. Steal. Yi Xian was at a loss for words. Suddenly, Xueqi stopped and turned to look at Lunatic Kai. Do you want to go with me? Lunatic Kai shook his head and looked at Yi Xian. I fed you 16 elixirs just now. That's exactly 5 million divinity crystals. Yi Xian jumped to his feet. 5 million divinity crystals? Are you sure? Lunatic Kai said calmly. Those are immortal-grade elixirs. Do you know what an immortal-grade elixir is? Yi Xian said in a low voice. I don't think it's that expensive. Lunatic Kai sneered. Not that expensive? Let me tell you, if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't sell it to you even if you offered 10 million. Yi Xian looked at Xueqi, who nodded. That elixir is very expensive. Yi Xian nodded and pointed his finger. The spatial ring with 5 million divinity crystals flew into Lunatic Kai's hand. Lunatic Kai glanced at Yi Xian. Don't feel uncomfortable. Go ask around for the price of the Holy Spirit elixir. Then, she turned and left. At this time, Xiaolinger suddenly shouted angrily. What kind of lousy elixir is this? Is it expensive? She waved her hand and a large pile of spiritual fruits appeared in front of Lunatic Kai. Lunatic Kai's eyelids twitched when he saw the pile of spiritual fruits. These are all supreme-grade spiritual fruits. If they are used to make elixirs, the quality of the elixirs will be greatly improved. At this time, Yi Xian walked up to Xiaolinger and rubbed Xiaolinger's little head. You can't say that. Xiaolinger looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. No matter what elixir it is, it saved my life. We should remember and be grateful to those who help us, not bite the hand that feeds us. Do you understand? Xiaolinger blinked and nodded. I don't understand. Yi Xian was speechless. I don't understand why you're nodding. He gently rubbed Xiaolinger's little head, then looked at Lunatic Kai. Miss, I will remember your kindness for saving my life. With that, he pointed at the spirit fruits on the ground. A small token of my appreciation. Please accept it. Lunatic Kai glanced at Yi Xian and kept the spiritual fruits. You and I are even. Yi Xian nodded and left with Xueqi. On the way, Xueqi suddenly said, Swordsman, Lunatic Kai is still a good person. Yi Xian nodded. I'm not angry. Xueqi looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled bitterly. She and you saved my life. Not to mention 5 million. Even 50 million wouldn't be too much. Your life-saving grace is greater than the heavens. Xueqi said seriously. Really? Yi Xian nodded. Xueqi hurriedly said. Then you must help me get that saber. Yi Xian said seriously. Are you really going to steal it? Xueqi shook her head. It's not stealing, it's taking. Yi Xian was speechless. Just like that, Xueqi brought Yi Xian to the God Nation. The Saber Sect. The Saber Sect was very famous in the God Nation, second only to the Confucian School of Military and School of Vertical and Horizontal. At this moment, there were very few people in the Saber Sect because most of the disciples had gone to the northern wasteland realm. There was a new Saber Sect. Xueqi brought Yi Xian to an underground place. As soon as they entered, a wave of heat hit them. Yi Xian frowned. What was this place? Xueqi continued to bring Yi Xian down. After about an hour, Xueqi brought Yi Xian to a fiery red well. Looking at the well, Xueqi was a little excited. Look! Yi Xian walked to the fire well and bent down to look. About 5 feet below, there was a fiery red saber floating. The saber was as red as a pool of blood. It was 2 fingers wide and there was a groove on the back of the saber. Inside it, a small red lotus slowly floated from top to bottom. And the entire saber exuded a fiery killing intent. And around the saber, there were 4 chains. The 4 chains locked the saber tightly. Good saber. This was Yi Xian's first impression. Beside Yi Xian, Xueqi said excitedly, Swordsman, do you know what saber this is? Yi Xian shook his head. Xueqi said, this is called the Hellfire Saber. It contains the Hellfire of the Red Lotus, which is ranked 7th on the Spirit ranking. This saber is ranked 5th on the Divine Weapon ranking. It's very powerful. Yi Xian looked at Xueqi.
He opened his palm and the executing heaven sword appeared. Yi Xian asked, "Is it better than my sword?"
Xueqi glared at Yi Xian. Are you trying to piss me off on purpose? Yi Xian roared with laughter.
The saber below was very strong indeed. If he were to slash it with his sword, he was confident that he could shatter it with a single strike.
Up until now, besides the World Prison Pagoda, he hadn't found anything that could resist the executing heaven sword. Meanwhile, Xueqi said, "Swordsman, help me cut the chains that lock it." Yi Xian looked at the 4 chains and hesitated for a moment before he said, "This saber belongs to your saber sect, right?" Xueqi nodded.
"Yes, it belongs to my saber sect."
Yi Xian asked, "Then why did they lock it?" Xueqi said angrily, "Who knows? In any case, I'm going to let it out." Yi Xian was slightly hesitant. "Miss Xue, I think that you should ask the seniors of your saber sect. Because there's definitely a reason why they locked it there." Xueqi blinked and said, "They have nothing better to do. Swordsman, help me cut those chains, and I'll take responsibility for everything." Yi Xian was speechless. Xueqi continued, "If you're unwilling, then let me use your sword. Because the chains below are protected by a formation, and ordinary weapons aren't able to harm it at all." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he looked down the well. In the next moment, a ray of light shot into the well, and it didn't take long for the chains that locked the karmic flame blade to suddenly transform into countless pieces. Bang!
The karmic flame blade charged out of the well along with a wave of flames.
It didn't stop there, and it continued charging towards the ground.
Xueqi hurriedly said, "Stop it."
Yi Xian opened his palm, and the executing heaven sword suddenly transformed into a ray of light that shot into the air. It didn't take long for the executing heaven sword to block the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade didn't stop there, and it slashed towards the executing heaven sword instead. Yi Xian shook his head. Isn't the karmic flame blade looking for trouble? As expected, the karmic flame blade had just slashed towards the executing heaven sword when it was blasted away. At this moment, there were already cracks on the karmic flame blade. Xueqi's expression changed when she saw this, and she hurriedly said, "Don't hurt it." As she spoke, she leaped up and arrived in front of the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade was trembling violently in fear. The executing heaven sword floated to Xueqi's side, and she hurriedly grabbed it. "Don't be angry. Let me talk to it." As she spoke, she flew over to the karmic flame blade and grabbed it. But in the next moment, her right hand loosened, and her hand was mangled. Xueqi was stunned when she witnessed this scene. The karmic flame blade intended to flee, but the executing heaven sword quickly blocked its path. The karmic flame blade was speechless. Yi Xian walked over to Xueqi and said in a low voice, "It must submit to you so that it won't hurt you." Xueqi looked at the karmic flame blade. "Will you submit to me?" The karmic flame blade trembled violently as if it was furious. Obviously, it wasn't willing to submit. Xueqi was expressionless. "Kill it." As soon as she finished speaking, she turned around and left. Yi Xian was speechless. The executing heaven sword actually slashed towards the karmic flame blade. The karmic flame blade instantly trembled in fear when it saw this. In the next moment, it flew over to Xueqi and let out a low hum. Xueqi was expressionless. "Didn't you refuse to follow me? Go fight it one-on-one." The karmic flame blade started to tremble violently. A moment later, Xueqi grabbed the karmic flame blade. At this moment, the karmic flame blade didn't hurt her. Yi Xian was speechless.
Xueqi glanced at the blade in her hand with undisguised fondness in her eyes.
At this moment, the bottom of the well suddenly trembled violently. Yi Xian's expression changed.
He bent over to look and saw that the lava in the well was suddenly boiling.
At the same time, terrifying heat waves kept spewing out from the ground. Yi Xian's expression darkened. Needless to say, something must have happened. Without hesitation, Yi Xian disappeared on the spot with Xueqi.
As soon as the two of them arrived on the surface, the ground beneath their feet began to tremble and countless amounts of lava spewed out.
Yi Xian looked at Xueqi. Xueqi's expression was very innocent. "It has nothing to do with me, right?" Yi Xian said indifferently, "What do you think?" At this moment, An old man suddenly appeared in front of Yi Xian and Xueqi. Xueqi's expression changed when she saw this old man. She hurriedly retreated behind Yi Xian. The old man looked at Xueqi coldly. "How did you get that blade out?" Xueqi lowered her head slightly and didn't speak. The old man said angrily, "Do you know what that blade is used for?" Xueqi glanced at the old man and said softly, "I don't." The old man said angrily, "Nonsense. That blade is something that suppresses the earth spirit energy here. If you take it away now, then the earth spirit energy here will erupt completely, and everything in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers will be transformed into ashes." Earth spirit energy? Yi Xian was stunned. He remembered that Yu had said that the energy of the earth could absorb earth spirit energy. Moreover, the earth spirit energy was much more abundant than the energy of the earth veins. The reason he hadn't absorbed earth spirit energy in the past was because earth spirit energy couldn't be found everywhere. Yi Xian hadn't expected that he would actually encounter it here. Xueqi, who stood behind Yi Xian, was instantly stunned when she heard the old man. She hadn't expected that the matter would be so serious. Everything in an area of a few tens of thousands of kilometers will be transformed into ashes. Doesn't that mean that the Saber sect will be destroyed by the energy of the earth veins? Xueqi was on the verge of crying when she thought up to here. The old man still wanted to say something, but Yi Xian suddenly said, "Senior, let me handle this matter." The old man looked at Yi Xian. "City Lord Yi, you're not welcome here." He naturally knew Yi Xian. Yi Xian had a certain reputation in God Nation now. Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "Senior, I'm also partly responsible for this matter. I, Yi Xian, am not the kind of person who won't take responsibility for what he does. Since this matter is related to me, I'll take responsibility until the end." The old man looked at Yi Xian coldly. "How are you going to take responsibility?" Yi Xian said in a deep voice, "I have an item that can absorb the earth spirit energy. However, it's extremely dangerous." At this point he sighed softly. "No matter how dangerous it is, I can only try." As he spoke, the great Tao Law appeared between his eyebrows. Soon, the earth spirit energy below began to gather towards him. In an instant, Yi Xian was enveloped in magma. Yi Xian was stunned. In the next moment, his face suddenly contorted. "It's so painful." However, he was laughing inside. "It's so King comfortable." Xueqi was stunned when she saw Yi Xian's painful expression. Soon, her tears flowed out and she kept repeating in her heart, "I'm sorry." Chapter 623. The old man from the Saber sect was stunned. Yi Xian was willing to sacrifice himself for the Saber sect? He was dumbfounded. Not far away, Yi Xian was frantically absorbing the earth spiritual power. After the earth spiritual power was absorbed by him, it was absorbed by the Great Tao Law and gathered in the Great Tao Law. And when the power of the earth passed through his body also benefited greatly. Due to the Great Tao Law, the earth spiritual power did not cause any harm to his body. The Great Tao Law restrained all energy and power that came from the earth. About 2 hours later, he had absorbed all of the earth string energy. After that, he lay down on the ground, his face twisted in pain. "I'm in so much pain." Xueqi quickly supported him. Are you all right?" Her voice was trembling. Yi Xian's body twitched as if he was having an epileptic seizure. Xueqi quickly looked at the old man, her face full of anxiety. "Big Grandpa, save him." The old man glanced at Yi Xian. "This kid is a little strange." Xueqi said angrily, "What's strange about him? He saved our Saber sect." "Big Grandpa, how can you be so cold-hearted?" "I won't call you Grandpa anymore. Old man, I'll call you Old Man." The old man was speechless. He glanced at Yi Xian on the ground and tapped with his finger. A white jade bottle landed in front of Yi Xian. Xueqi hurriedly opened the white jade bottle and fed Yi Xian all the elixirs inside. After about an hour, Yi Xian slowly opened his eyes. He was a little dazed. "Am I still alive?" Xueqi quickly said. "Yes, you're still alive." Yi Xian took a deep breath. "You're still alive." Xueqi lowered her head slightly. "Shameless." "Swordsman, I'm sorry." Yi Xian looked at Xueqi and sighed softly. "Why are you being so polite? Isn't it normal for friends to help each other?" Xueqi looked at Yi Xian. Do you see me as a friend?
Yi Xian nodded.
Yeah.
Xueqi suddenly burst into tears.
I just wanted to rob you. I'm really bad. Yi Xian was speechless.
Meanwhile, the old man suddenly said, "Little girl, come over here."
Xueqi did not respond. She was still crying.
The old man said in a low voice, "Come here."
Xueqi was a little dissatisfied. I'm still sad.
The elder shook his head and sighed. Then, he looked at Yi Xian and said, "City Lord Yi, as far as I know, His Majesty will personally go to your Shenwu city soon.
If you don't return, I'm afraid your Shenwu city will be flattened." Yi Xian's expression changed when he heard this. He had almost forgotten about this. That little girl from the Divine Kingdom said that she wanted Divine Martial City to surrender. Yi Xian immediately stood up and looked at Xueqi. "Miss Xueqi, I have to go back first. See you later." After that, he rode his sword and disappeared into the horizon. Xueqi was stunned. He's leaving just like that?
Not far away, the old man said in a low voice. "Little girl, stay away from this kid.
He doesn't look like a decent person."
Xueqi looked at the old man with dissatisfaction.
"Grandpa, how can you say that about me? You're really too bad." After that, she hugged the karmic fire saber and left. The old man was speechless. In the clouds, Yi Xian rode his sword back to Shenwu City. At this moment, his heart was heavy. That little girl from the Divine Kingdom wanted Shenwu City to surrender. Once it surrendered, the entire Shenwu City would have to listen to her orders. He did not like this. However, he was very clear that the current Shenwu City could not resist that little girl. What should he do? How frustrating. Yi Xian thought for a long time. In the end, he decided to reason with her. He must reason with her. Thinking of this, Yi Xian sped up. More and more forces from the Divine Kingdom entered the three wasteland worlds, and these forces divided the three wasteland worlds. However, there was no massacre. Of course, the interests of many local forces were greatly affected. But now, because of the Divine Kingdom's strength, there was no resistance. As for the Lawful Alliance, the Divine Dao Army, the Tang Clan, and the Demon Clan, they all fled to the Sky Sea. The Sky Sea was boundless and had many islands. It was easy to defend and difficult to attack. In addition, most of the Divine Kingdom's army was stationed in various places. Therefore, the Lawful Alliance and other forces had not been completely eradicated. Apart from that, there was another anomaly. That was Shenwu City. Currently, this Shenwu City had not surrendered to the Divine Kingdom, and the Divine Kingdom did not send any experts to attack Shenwu City. However, everyone knew that. Could Shenwu City continue to maintain its transcendent status? Shenwu City. After Yi Xian returned to Shenwu City, he immediately summoned Enlancio and the others. Inside the main hall, the experts of Wu Yuan and the Sword Sect were all present. Everyone's expression was somewhat solemn. The Divine Kingdom's strength had greatly exceeded their expectations. Under such circumstances, it was simply impossible for Shenwu City to oppose the Divine Kingdom. Yi Xian said with a smile, "Everyone can speak your opinions." Below, a Wu Yuan expert suddenly said, "We can't beat them." Yi Xian smiled. "Indeed, I can't beat him." Everyone looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian stood up and said softly, "If you believe me, then let me resolve this matter." Everyone nodded. Towards Yi Xian, they had unreserved trust. By then, Yi Xian was the only one he could trust. Soon, everyone dispersed, leaving only Yi Xian and Enlancio in the hall. Enlancio walked to Yi Xian's side and said softly, "What do you plan to do?" Yi Xian looked outside the distant hall and said with a smile, "What else can I do?" Enlancio said in a low voice, "The difference between our strength and theirs is too great." Yi Xian nodded. "I know." Enlancio glanced at Yi Xian. "You make the decision." Finished speaking, she turned around and left. Only Yi Xian was left in the hall. Yi Xian stayed in the hall for a full 2 hours, and during these 2 hours, no one knew what Yi Xian did. Outside the hall, Yi Xian stood quietly. And at this time, a little girl arrived at Shenwu City's gate. This person was the Divine Kingdom's Divine Lord. The little girl wore a black dress today with a long sword hanging on her waist. Her black hair was tied up with a purple ribbon, looking especially cool. 1,000 feet behind the little girl stood 10 black-clothed people. The 10 black-clothed people wore black gauze masks on their heads and long swords hung on their waists, making it impossible to see their depths. And in front of these 10 people stood a blindfolded man. The man looked to be around 30 years old, wore black clothes, and held a sheathed long sword in his hand. In the distance, the little girl walked towards the city. The blindfolded man and the 10 people were about to follow, but the little girl raised her right hand, and the 11 immediately left. It didn't take long for the little girl to arrive in the city. The streets of the city were still very bustling because very few people recognized the little girl. The little girl walked forward slowly, and all along the way, people on both sides of the street would look at her from time to time. The little girl ignored everyone's gazes and continued walking forward. Right at this moment, a man suddenly walked in front of the little girl. He looked at the little girl and laughed mischievously. "Little girl, it seems like you have just arrived at the divine martial city?" The little girl nodded. The man's eyes lit up, and he hurriedly said, "There are many bad people in Xueqi City. You have to be careful." The little girl nodded. "All right." The man was about to speak when the little girl suddenly said, "It's not easy to live. Let's go." The man was slightly stunned. In the next moment, he took a deep look at the little girl, and then he hurriedly turned around and left. The little girl said softly, "Investigate. If he's done too many bad things, then don't let him live." In the dark, some people quietly left. The little girl continued forward, and in a short while, she arrived at the foot of the Sword Sect's mountain, and there stood a man. This man was Yi Xian. The girl looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian chuckled, "Welcome to the Sword Sect." The little girl looked at Yi Xian. "The lives and deaths of countless people in Xueqi City depend on a single thought of yours." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he walked in front of the little girl and smiled. "Let's not talk about these unpleasant things for now. Come, I've made a few dishes, and we can talk while eating." As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his right hand, and a jade table appeared in front of them. There were over a dozen dishes on the table. P.S. Explosion on the 15th. When they realized this, many people silently read and silently voted. Very few people came out to talk. Come out and say something. Let me know that I'm not writing a book alone. Otherwise, I'll feel so lonely every day. It's good to talk. Chapter 624. The girl didn't refuse. Instead, she sat down in front of Yi Xian and glanced at the dishes on the table. "You made this." Yi Xian nodded. "I made it." The girl nodded. Just as she was about to eat, Xiao suddenly appeared next to Yi Xian. She glanced at the girl, then at Yi Xian. "I want to eat too." Yi Xian laughed. "All right, let's eat together." Xiao grinned, then picked up her chopsticks. Yi Xian suddenly said, "Let the guests start first." Xiao said, "Oh." She looked at the girl implying, "Hurry up and do it." The girl glanced at Xiao a special essence spirit with limitless possibilities in the future. Xiao asked, "Do you mean very powerful?" The girl nodded. Little hurriedly asked, "How powerful will it be?" The girl looked at Xiao "If you follow me, you will become very, very powerful. If you follow him, your achievements will be limited." Yi Xian smiled, but didn't say anything. He was a bit surprised. He hadn't expected that the girl would value Xiao so much. Xiao shook her head. "Not with you." The girl nodded. She didn't ask why. She wouldn't force anything. Just like Yi Xian's supreme treasure. If that treasure didn't choose to follow her, she wouldn't force it. If it's mine, it must be mine. If it's not, I won't accept it even if you give it to me. The girl picked up her chopsticks, picked up a small mushroom, and placed it in her mouth. After a moment, she nodded. "Not bad." Xiao hurriedly picked up her chopsticks as well. Yi Xian's cooking was quite good. After a while, the little girl said, "In the chaotic universe, aside from my divine kingdom, no other power can transcend. The school of Confucianism can't, the school of military strategy can't, the school of vertical and horizontal can't, and your Xueqi City can't either." Then she glanced at Yi Xian. "The chaotic universe must be unified. It must be unified in a real sense.
Yi Xian said in a low voice. You're a swordsman, and I can sense that you don't have much desire for power.
Why do you want to unify the Chaos Verse? Isn't unifying the Chaos Verse a good thing?
Yi Xian smiled.
I'm just curious.
The girl put down her chopsticks.
Responsibility.
The responsibility of the Divine Kingdom is to unify the Chaos Verse.
Since I'm the God Master, this is my responsibility. Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian. Do you know why the 3 deserted worlds on your side still lost?
Yi Xian said solemnly. Our strength is inferior to yours.
The little girl shook her head. Not exactly.
The real reason is that you don't have a sense of belonging. The 3 deserted worlds each have their own way of doing things, each with their own thoughts.
On your side, benefits are paramount. There is no sense of family or country. In everyone's mind, there is only benefit.
For benefit you can betray everyone else.
You only fight for yourselves.
Once something goes against you, you will immediately change your way of thinking. You will become a pile of loose sand and even turn against the other side.
Speaking of this, she looked at Yi Xian. We fight for benefits, but also for our beliefs.
You, on the other hand, have no beliefs.
Yi Xian was silent.
Just as the little girl said, the people on their side all had their own way of doing things.
They had no sense of family or country. Many of them didn't even know what they were fighting for. Of course, most of them were fighting for themselves. All of them wanted to reap benefits. Under these circumstances, how could they face the Divine Kingdom? Although the Xinwu city was united, the difference in strength was too great. The little girl stood up and looked at Yi Xian. You are a swordsman. You have pride and you are not afraid of the Divine Kingdom. However, have you ever thought that you are the city lord of the Xinwu city? With a single thought, you can decide the life and death of countless people in the city.
As she spoke, she walked in front of Yi Xian and lightly tapped Yi Xian's chest with her finger.
A swordsman's sword would rather be broken than bent.
However, this does not mean that a swordsman can be a selfish person. If you are alone you can be like this.
However, you are not alone. Do you understand?
Yi Xian smiled.
Actually, you can completely crush the Xinwu city. Why are you so patient with me and telling me this? The little girl didn't answer.
She sat down and said, You can tell me your answer now.
Yi Xian thought about it and said, I still want to fight for it. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. At this time, 11 people appeared behind her. Just these 11 people. No one in the Xinwu city could stop them. At this time, Yi Xian said again, How about this? I will fight with you first. If I can't win, the Xinwu city will follow your will. If I win, the Xinwu city will be like before, unrestricted by anyone. Of course, we will only stay in the Xinwu city and will not expand our forces outside. How about it? The little girl looked at Yi Xian.
You don't want to give up, so you want to fight, but you don't want to start a war with my god nation with the holy martial arts city.
So, you want to fight my god nation in your own name? Yi Xian nodded.
The little girl said, This request of yours is beneficial to you, but not to me.
So, I also want to make a request.
Yi Xian said, Speak. The little girl said, No matter what the final outcome is, you have to help me with one thing. After a moment of silence, Yi Xian nodded. Sure. The little girl nodded. Bring me to the sword sect first.
Yi Xian stood up, put away the table and said, Please. Just like that, the little girl came to the sword sect's hall under Yi Xian's lead. In front of the sword sect's hall, there was a statue. It was the statue of the green-robed man. The little girl came before the statue of the green-robed man.
She looked at the green-robed man in silence.
Yi Xian didn't disturb her. The little girl looked at the statue for a long time. Finally she said softly, Why didn't his soul or avatar appear during the Great Wall War? Yi Xian smiled bitterly. They have been used up. The little girl nodded. That's a pity. Then she turned to Yi Xian. Do you want to fight one-on-one, or call someone? Yi Xian smiled. One-on-one first. The little girl nodded. I'll call someone. Yi Xian looked straight at the little girl. I'll fight you one-on-one. The little girl looked at Yi Xian, but didn't say anything. One-on-one. Yi Xian knew that the little girl was strong, very, very strong.
Even Mu Nanji's avatar couldn't do anything to her, so one could imagine how strong she was. Moreover, the little girl before him was a sword goddess. It could be said that he was deeply afraid of her, or rather, slightly afraid. Afraid. He, Yi Xian, was a human, not a god. Naturally, he would be afraid. However, he never ran away from his fear and his heart. The more afraid he was, the more he wanted to challenge. He could lose, but he couldn't be afraid. The little girl said softly, "You surprised me." Yi Xian smiled. Surprised about what? The little girl looked at Yi Xian. No one has dared to challenge me since I was 10 years old in the kingdom of God. Yi Xian said with a smile, I rarely challenge others, but I really want to have a fight with you. A real fight without any external objects. The little girl nodded. Sure. Yi Xian said, Can I let the sword sect disciples watch? The little girl looked at Yi Xian. Sure. Soon, all the disciples of the sword sect arrived. The little girl curled her right hand, and a wooden stick suddenly flew into her hand from 30 m away. Yi Xian was instantly put in a difficult position. He had wanted to take an ordinary sword, but the other party had taken a wooden stick. No matter how thick his skin was, he would be too embarrassed to take a sword. So, he waved his right hand, and the wooden stick fell into his hand. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. In my world, the sword Tao is divided into 3 realms. The first is the wood sword realm, the second is the divine sword realm, and the third is the wood sword realm. Every sword represented a realm of the sword Tao. You should be in the divine sword realm now, so you can take your executing heaven sword. Yi Xian shook his head. I want to try a wooden sword. The little girl nodded. Make your move. Yi Xian said, Please enlighten me. With that, he suddenly vanished. A cold light appeared in front of the little girl. The little girl stabbed out with her sword. It was a very calm stab. When the stab collided with the cold light instantly disappeared. Yi Xian was about to attack again, but at this moment, 3 little girls suddenly appeared beside him. In the next moment, 3 swords stabbed at his forehead, the back of his neck, and his abdomen. All of them were fatal. Yi Xian's expression changed slightly, and he swept with his sword. However, this strike missed, and in the next moment, a sword had already pierced his chest. The sword went half an inch deep. Blood splattered. And almost at the same time, Yi Xian stabbed at the little girl. He instinctively chose to exchange life for life. However, the moment he attacked, the little girl had already returned to her original spot. Yi Xian looked at the little girl who said softly, You're too slow. As her voice fell, she suddenly turned illusory. Not far away, Yi Xian's expression changed. He was about to attack, but the little girl had already returned to her original spot. And at this moment, there were 10 sword scars on his body. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. The naked eye can never compare to the mind. The speed of using the hand to attack will never be faster than the heart. With the heart as the sword, and the sword as the heart, one can achieve extreme speed. Yi Xian said softly, Is it the heart sword? The little girl nodded. Give it a try? Yi Xian slowly closed his eyes. After a moment, he suddenly disappeared. This time, Yi Xian's speed was a little faster than before, but it was not obvious. In the distance, the little girl suddenly raised her sword. Pang! Yi Xian returned to his original spot. The little girl looked at Yi Xian. Clear the heart of distractions, 1 sword to kill immortals. In the distance, Yi Xian was silent. Gap. He really felt the gap. This little girl's strength, even an emperor expert couldn't compare to her. Thinking of this, Yi Xian smiled bitterly. In this world, there would always be some outstanding people who were so outstanding that people couldn't help but sigh. Why was there such a big gap between people? Hard work was important. However, talent was often more important. Besides talent, one's birth was also more important. The scariest thing was that people with good birth, with talent that made others despair, would work harder than ordinary people. Yi Xian looked at the little girl. I can't beat you. Admit defeat. What people were most afraid of was not losing, but not being able to accept it. At this moment, he regretting that he didn't learn sword Tao from the plain dress girl. And now, even if he wanted to learn, he couldn't find anyone. He could only rely on himself to slowly explore. And when Yi Xian said, I can't beat you, He suddenly felt his whole body relax like never before. He, Yi Xian, didn't want to lose to any one of the younger generation, and as for this little girl, he didn't want to lose to her, because from Qingqing until now, he had never lost to any one of the younger generation. However, he didn't know that this was an obsession. Many things the more you want, the more you can't, the more you want to lose. Admit defeat. It was to let go of the obsession. Once the obsession was let go, the heart would naturally be light. The heart was light, the sword was fast. Yi Xian suddenly looked up at the little girl. Another round. Chapter 625. Let's fight again. Everyone was looking at Yi Xian. Yi Xian's voice was very calm as he looked at the little girl. However, the little girl shook her head. You have some enlightenment, and you will transform. Unfortunately, you are still not my match. As she spoke, she opened her palm, and the wooden branch slowly flew to the side. At this moment, the wooden branch suddenly flew in front of the little girl, trembling slightly. The wooden branch originally had no spirit, but the little girl just gave it a trace of spirit. The sword lives because of the person. The little girl gently stroked the branch and said softly, You are not suitable to follow me. Stay here and let the sword intent slowly nourish you. If there is an opportunity in the future, you will have your own good fortune. With that, she turned and left. As if thinking of something, she suddenly stopped and said softly, You have lost. My people will take over Shenwu City. With that, she walked into the distance. But soon, she stopped again and turned to look at Yi Xian. You want Shenwu City to be free? Yi Xian nodded. The little girl said, If you do one thing for me, I can let Shenwu City be free for 10 years. 10 years? Yi Xian asked. What is it? If the little girl was willing to give him 10 years, it was undoubtedly a good thing for him. 10 years was enough for him to do many things. At this moment the little girl said, You will know in the future. Come with me. Yi Xian. Just like that, Yi Xian followed the little girl and left Shenwu City. On a giant golden dragon, the little girl stood on the dragon's head with her hands behind her back and her eyes slightly closed. Beside the little girl was Yi Xian, and behind them were the 11 black-robed powerhouses. Yi Xian couldn't help but ask, What do you need me to do? Intuition told him that it might not be a good thing. There were so many powerhouses in God Nation, but she just had to ask him. This was definitely not a normal matter. The little girl opened her eyes and said softly, You will know soon. Yi Xian said in a low voice, Your people will not interfere with Shenwu City, right? The little girl nodded. I won't. However, your Shenwu City's Wu Yuan and Sword Sect are not allowed to expand. Yi Xian smiled and said, Don't worry, we just want to develop well now. The little girl nodded and slowly closed her eyes. Yi Xian sat cross-legged on the ground. At this moment, he kept thinking about what the little girl had said to him. With the heart as the sword, with the sword as the heart. Not long ago, when he was trapped by Ah Yu, he comprehended the Tao and became a sage. At that time, he understood that he had to look straight into his heart. When he was fighting the little girl, he had an obsession in his heart. He did not want to lose, especially not to a swordsman of the same generation. The more he did not want to lose, the more indignant he felt. The moment he admitted defeat, he realized that his entire body had relaxed. This feeling was extremely comfortable, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from his shoulders. He knew that the change in his mental state had caused his sword Tao to change as well. As for what the changes were, he did not know. The path of sword Tao E was to cultivate the heart, and this heart might be cultivated for a lifetime. Every stage and every event would give him a new and different understanding. Perhaps this was life. At this moment, he really missed the girl in the plain dress. If she was still here, many of his doubts about sword Tao would definitely be easily solved. But now, he could only rely on himself to comprehend everything. If he comprehended correctly, it would be fine, but if he comprehended incorrectly. At this moment, the little girl suddenly said, We're here. Yi Xian retracted his thoughts and looked down. Order City. The golden dragon landed, and Yi Xian and the little girl got off the dragon. The little girl led Yi Xian towards the city lord mansion. On the way, Yi Xian suddenly asked, I still don't know how to address you. The little girl said, Little Seven. Yi Xian was stunned. Little Seven?
Little Seven nodded. Is there a problem? Yi Xian smiled awkwardly. This name is a little too simple. There must be some meaning to it, right? Little Seven calmly said, just call me Little Seven. Yi Xian. Not long later, Little Seven brought Yi Xian to the city lord mansion. At this moment, there were 7 people there. He knew 2 of them. They were the 2 sword-hugging elders behind Little Seven. These 2 were Xueqi and Xiang Yu. Among them, he had met Xueqi once in Ascending Heaven City. Apart from these 2, there were 3 other elders. They were Master Lu Fu from the Confucian faction, Han Yuzi from the military school, and Wang Jingji from the school of vertical and horizontal. There was also a middle-aged man holding a blade. He wore a white robe and his eyes were closed, as if he was in deep thought. Seeing Yi Xian, everyone was a little surprised. The little girl found a place to sit, and the others all sat down. The little girl said, "Did you find its location?" Xueqi nodded, "I know its approximate location." Little Seven asked, "How strong is it?" Xueqi said solemnly, "Strength unknown." Little Seven nodded, "Let the Celestial Arcanum sect continue to investigate." Xueqi said, "They are doing their best to investigate. However, the other party is hiding very well. I'm afraid it will take some time to find its exact location." Little Seven was silent for a moment and then said, "How are the Order Alliance, Tang Clan, and the Monster Race?" Xueqi said, "They have fled to Sky Sea. That area is too big and complicated. Moreover, they are hiding in small groups, so we can't wipe them all out in a short time. However, once our side stabilizes, the people here can go over together." Little Seven said softly, "Is there anyone willing to submit?" Xueqi said solemnly, "Yes, but very few." Little Seven nodded, "Let Nangong handle this. If the Order Alliance, Monster Race, and Tang Clan are willing to submit, I can let bygones be bygones. If they are stubborn and send the guards to Sky Sea, leave none alive." Xueqi nodded. "Understood." At this moment, Little Seven looked at Yi Xian. "You might be curious why I invited him here." Xueqi nodded. Little Seven said, "I have decided to let him participate in our mission." When they heard this, all of them were stunned. The middle-aged man who was hugging the blade opened his eyes and glanced at Yi Xian before closing them. Xueqi hesitated for a moment and then said, "Your Majesty, he is really too weak." "Yi Xian," Little Seven said, "he will be useful." Xueqi nodded, "I will listen to your Majesty's orders." Little Seven said, "All of you can leave first." Xueqi and the others turned around and left. At this moment, Yi Xian said, "What are all of you going to do?" Little Seven said, "You will know in the future. Follow me." After saying this, she walked off into the distance. Yi Xian sighed in a low voice. He had boarded a pirate ship. In just a while, Little Seven brought Yi Xian to a training field. Yi Xian was delighted. "You want to spar with me?" He had gained a lot from sparring with Little Seven. Little Seven shook her head. She opened her palm and 3 sword-wielding mechanical puppets appeared in front of Yi Xian. Yi Xian was shocked. "You want me to spar with them?" Little Seven nodded. "I used them to cultivate in the past. You can try." Yi Xian looked at the 3 mechanical puppets. In the next moment, he suddenly disappeared. Pretty much at the same time, the 3 mechanical puppets suddenly attacked. Chi-chi-chi. Along with 3 ripping sounds, Yi Xian instantly returned to his original position. The moment he stopped, the 3 swords suddenly stabbed at him from 3 different angles. Fast. Accurate. Vicious. That was Yi Xian's first thought. Yi Xian was about to take the sword when the little girl suddenly said, "You are not allowed to use your executing heaven sword." Yi Xian. Just like that, Yi Xian was tortured. In the boundless starry sky, a giant carried a tombstone that was thousands of feet long and slowly moved forward. Every step the giant took caused the entire starry sky to tremble violently. The giant kept walking in one direction for who knew how long. On this day, the giant suddenly stopped and looked into the distance with deep eyes. On his shoulder, the tombstone suddenly trembled. On the tombstone, 2 large blood-red words became more and more enchanting. These 2 blood-red words were Yi Xian. After a moment, the giant continued forward. In an unknown place, there was a small island that floated in the starry sky. On the island, there was a palace. The entire island was surrounded by immortal chi, like a paradise. In the palace, a woman in white sat quietly. In the woman's hand, there was a scroll, and on her left, there were 2 tortoiseshell. This person was the former patriarch of the Tang clan, Mu Nanji. Suddenly, Mu Nanji frowned. She looked up at the horizon and pinched her fingers. After a moment, her expression changed. Is she crazy? After saying that, she suddenly got up and left. At this moment, a voice came from the palace. Where is Master going? Back to the chaotic universe. In a certain city, in front of a blacksmith, a man with a scraggly beard was lying on a chair, a broken sword hanging from his waist. The man was lying on the chair, drunk. At this moment, the space in front of him suddenly trembled, and a voice came from within. After a moment, the man suddenly opened his eyes. Sword light flashed in his eyes. How dare you? After saying that, he suddenly got up and flew into the sky on his sword. At this moment, a woman from the blacksmith chased after him. Where are you going? A voice came from the horizon. Go back. The woman said angrily, Jian Nanshan, didn't you say that you don't care about the sword sect anymore? In the horizon, the voice said, it has nothing to do with the sword sect. Wait for me to come back. In front of a cliff, a middle-aged man sat cross-legged. The middle-aged man was covered in weeds. No one knew how long the middle-aged man had been sitting here. Suddenly, the space in front of the middle-aged man slightly trembled. After a moment, the middle-aged man suddenly opened his eyes, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. Someone is more arrogant than me, Zhou. After saying that, he got up and left. In a galaxy, a man walked in the sky. The man had shoulder-length hair, and there was an unsheathed blade and a sheathed sword hanging from his waist. At this moment, the space in front of the man suddenly trembled. The man stopped. After a long time, the man said softly, "Tu Tendo interesting." After saying that, he turned around and left. In a room in the City of Order, Xueqi sat quietly. In front of her, there was a sword. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from outside the door. Your Majesty, I have found the exact whereabouts of the Tendo. However, it seems to be calling someone. Xueqi nodded slightly. Got it. P.S. Please save your monthly tickets. I am going to explode on the 15th. Chapter 626. On the training field. Yi Xian was still sparring with the 3 mechanical puppets. He had to say that sparring with the 3 mechanical puppets was very rewarding. And every time after sparring, he would sit down and meditate. Enlightenment. At this moment, Yi Xian truly understood the importance of the word enlightenment, especially as a swordsman. Just like that, he trained in this training field for a full half a month. In this half a month, he had greatly improved in all aspects, especially in terms of strength and speed, now that he did not use Dragon Soul and Dragon Power. His speed and strength were several times stronger than before, especially after he used Heart as Sword. Sword with Heart. And that Xueqi would come every once in a while, and every time she came, the mechanical puppet would become much stronger. On this day, Yi Xian, who was training, suddenly stopped. He turned around and took a look, then left. Outside Order City. Yi Xian came to a dense forest. In the dense forest, he saw a familiar person. Tang Qing. Seeing Tang Qing, Yi Xian was a little surprised. Miss Tang. Tang Qing nodded. Let's talk somewhere else. With that, she left with Yi Xian. Not long later, Yi Xian and Tang Qing came to the depths of the forest. On the way, Tang Qing suddenly asked, You surrendered to God Nation? Yi Xian smiled. No. Tang Qing turned to look at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled lightly. Miss Tang Qing came to find me, there should be something, right? Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian said softly, Miss Tang Qing, I discovered something, do you know what it is? Tang Qing shook her head. Yi Xian said, Back then, I fought with you against God Nation, but unfortunately, we were never united. Especially that Star Lord. He wanted me dead time and time again, but other than the Southern Sect Martial Masters, no one stood on my side. I think that the Demon King also wants me dead. Perfected Chu also wants me dead. Even your Tang clan's patriarch, Tang Yen, probably thinks the same. Right. Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian asked again, fight against the god race? In fact, the few of you have never thought about the common people in this world. You only think about your own interests. As he spoke, Yi Xian raised his head and looked into the distance. He softly said, my abilities are limited, and I can't be the savior of the world. As long as I, my friends and the divine martial city are safe, that's all that matters. Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and did not say anything. Yi Xian smiled and said, after God's nation took over your territories, they didn't slaughter you. But I dare to guarantee that if your clans enter the God nation will definitely be plunged into misery and suffering. Do you believe me? Hearing this, Tang Qing sighed softly. Because she knew that what Yi Xian said was true. If they entered the God nation, the people of the God nation would be plunged into misery and suffering. After the divine nation entered the 3 deserted worlds, it did not return. Robbery. This was something she had not expected. Not only that, the policies implemented by the divine kingdom in some places were very good. Moreover, with the suppression of the divine kingdom, there were fewer conflicts in many places. Of course, the Order Alliance, the Tang clan, and the monster race must have suffered heavy losses. Everything was gone. Yi Xian suddenly said, Miss Tang, why are you looking for me? Tang Qing glanced at Yi Xian and said, can't I look for you for no reason? Yi Xian smiled and said, of course not. I am also very happy to see Miss Tang Qing. Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and said, happy about what? Yi Xian grinned and said, of course I am happy to be with a beauty. Tang Qing shook her head and said, Yi Xian, if you are not interested in a girl, don't seduce her. Yi Xian. At this time, Tang Qing suddenly said seriously, I heard that you are with that girl, so I came to look for you. Tell me, why are you following her? Yi Xian said in a low voice, I promised to do something for her. Tang Qing asked, this is why she did not cause trouble for Xueqi city? Yi Xian nodded and said. Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian looked at Tang Qing and said, what is it? Tang Qing shook her head and said, you must leave her. Yi Xian was a little puzzled and said, why? Tang Qing said in a low voice, something big might happen in Xueqi city recently. Yi Xian asked, what big thing? Tang Qing was silent. Yi Xian smiled and said, if Miss Tang Qing is not willing to say, I will not force you. Tang Qing glanced at Yi Xian and said, I do not know the specifics. I only know that the Order Alliance, my Tang clan, and the monster race are preparing to counterattack at any time. Yi Xian frowned and said, counterattack. Tang Qing nodded and said. Yi Xian asked, what do you use to counterattack? Tang Qing said softly, I do not know. However, since they dare to choose to counterattack, they must be confident. Therefore, there might be some changes in Xueqi city. Therefore it is best that you leave her. After saying that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian hurriedly said, Miss Tang Qing. Tang Qing turned around and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian thought about it and said, if you need anything, remember to inform me. Tang Qing looked at Yi Xian and said, take care of yourself. After saying that, she turned around and left. Yi Xian kept silent for a long while and then he turned around and left. After returning to Order City, he noticed that Seven was at the training ground. Seven said, she is the Lady Tang from the Tang clan? Yi Xian's face sunk as he was noticed. Seven said, I won't hurt her. Yi Xian looked at Seven, Miss Seven, what do you want me to help you with? Seven said, you will know soon. Yi Xian hesitated for a moment and then said, Miss Seven, you know that I am a coward and I can't be frightened. Seven looked at Yi Xian. You can go back on your word. Go back on his word? Yi Xian shook his head and smiled. He wanted to go back on his word but he had his principles. Since he promised her, then he had to do it. Of course, if it was something that went against his principles, then he wouldn't do it. As if she knew what Yi Xian was thinking about, Seven said, don't worry, I won't ask you to do anything like kill people. When he heard that, Yi Xian heaved a sigh of relief. As long as it wasn't killing people, then it shouldn't be a big deal. Seven said, follow me. After saying that, She turned around and left. Yi Xian followed.
On the way, 7 suddenly asked, "How is your cultivation?"
Yi Xian said, "I have improved by leaps and bounds."
One had to say that his cultivation and sword technique had improved by leaps and bounds with the 3 mechanical puppets, including his flying swords. The thing he wanted to do the most was to fight 7 again. 7 nodded slightly when she heard Yi Xian. "That's good." As soon as she finished speaking, she brought Yi Xian to a courtyard, and he saw Xueqi and the others there. This time, there were 4 more mysterious people wearing bamboo hats and black robes. When he saw them, Yi Xian's expression instantly became solemn. Danger! That was the first thing he felt when he saw them. How many experts are there in God's kingdom? 7 glanced at them and said, "Where are the border suppression blades?" Xueqi bowed slightly. "They will be here soon." 7 nodded. "Are all of you ready?"
Xueqi said, "Everything is ready, just 2 more people." At this moment, a woman walked in. It was Nangongwan. Nangongwan glanced at Yi Xian, and then she walked in front of 7 and bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, everything is ready." 7 nodded slightly, and then she looked at Yi Xian. "He will be joining us." Xueqi and the others glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. 7 looked at Yi Xian, and Yi Xian said solemnly, "Miss 7, what are you going to do? You should at least let me be mentally prepared." He was getting more and more panicked. 7 looked at Yi Xian. "Nothing much, I am just going to kill the Tendo." "Kill the Tendo?" Yi Xian was stunned. 2. Kill the Tendo? 7 nodded. Yi Xian was shocked. "Didn't you say that you won't kill?" 7 was calm. "The Tendo isn't human." Yi Xian said, "I." Chapter 627. Kill the Tendo. One had to say that Yi Xian was stunned. He knew about the heavenly Tao. It had almost killed him in the past. However, he had never thought about defying the heavens. Killing the Tendo was defying the heavens. Yi Xian said solemnly, "Miss 7, can I ask you why you want to kill the Tendo?" 7 looked at Yi Xian. "It shouldn't exist." Yi Xian didn't understand. "Why?" 7 smiled. "Do you know why there is so much war here?" Yi Xian shook his head. 7 said, "It is because the Tendo doesn't want the living beings of this universe to be united." Yi Xian still didn't understand. "Why?" Nangongwan said, "Because if everyone is united, it won't be good for its rule. Have you noticed that the laws of this world are all set by it? Moreover, it controls all the sources of heaven and earth." All the sources of heaven and earth. Yi Xian kept silent. He didn't forget that when he tried to save Xiao, he tried to take the Tendo source and was nearly killed by the Tendo. However, he didn't hate the Tendo at all. That was because it belonged to them. Just at this moment, Nangongwan suddenly said, "You definitely think that the Tendo source belongs to it, right?" Yi Xian asked, "Isn't it?" Nangongwan smiled. "Of course not. The Tendo source is something from the chaotic universe. When the chaotic universe was born, it had these sources. The source is controlled by the Tendo and it doesn't allow people to absorb it. Or rather, it only allows people it values to absorb it." Yi Xian kept silent. Nangongwan looked at Yi Xian. "Do you know why my god country is so strong? Because in the past, the martial gods slaughtered Tendo and gained control of Tendo's origin. Because of this, countless people in my divine nation can enjoy Tendo's origin. Therefore we are much stronger than you. On your side, you are still under the control of the Tendo, so many of your people can't become emperors. Why? Because it is restricting your strength. Only in this way can it enslave you forever." Yi Xian thought for a moment, and then he said in a low voice, "Miss Nangong, now that you mention it, I realize that this Tendo is quite bad. If it wasn't for its restrictions, then I, Yi Xian, would have become an emperor a long time ago." Tendo. Nangongwan's expression froze. She shook her head and said, "Don't put the blame on Tendo. You have your own problems." Yi Xian was speechless. At the side, 7 suddenly said, "Do you understand now?" Yi Xian said solemnly, "Miss 7, I am not familiar with the Tendo, so I don't know if it is good or bad. What I want to say is that I can't beat it." "You want me to help you kill the Tendo? Are you asking me to be cannon fodder?" Everyone. 7 was slightly stunned.
A moment later she shook her head. I won't let you be cannon fodder and I won't let you attack. You will know when the time comes. Yi Xian thought about it and then nodded. Okay. He seemed to have thought of something and said quickly, Miss Seven, I want to complain. I want to complain about Nangong Wan. Nangong Wan glanced at Yi Xian and didn't say anything. Seven looked at Yi Xian and said, What do you want to complain about? Yi Xian said solemnly, That day when I went to your god country, she brought me around. She said that she wouldn't attack guests, but she got tens of thousands of soldiers to beat me up and even wanted to kill me. She went back on her words and damaged the god country's reputation. I suggest stripping her of her Kingdom Knight title. Nangong Wan was expressionless. Seven looked at Yi Xian. You. Yi Xian, a moment later Seven said softly. City Lord Yi, you are an interesting person, just that your skin is a little thick. Nangong Wan looked at Yi Xian. Not only is he thick, he has reached the realm of shamelessness. Yi Xian wanted to say something but Seven suddenly said, I will accompany you to practice the sword. Yi Xian was delighted. Okay, let's go. After saying that, he turned around and left. Seven also walked out. In the field Xueqi sighed. I wonder why His Majesty sent this fellow here. Nangong Wan said softly. His Majesty must have a reason. Moreover, Yi Xian isn't useless. Xueqi nodded. That's true. If he stays in front of the tendo for a period of time, the tendo will probably collapse. Everyone in the surroundings smiled when they heard this. Martial arts field. Yi Xian and Seven stood there quietly. Seven looked at Yi Xian. Draw your sword. Yi Xian nodded. In the next moment, he tapped his feet and floated out. Seven closed her eyes and stabbed out. Pang! Along with an explosion, Yi Xian instantly returned to his original position. At this moment, a flying sword suddenly slashed in front of Seven. Seven's expression didn't change as she held the sword in her right hand and flicked it. Chi! The flying sword changed its position and flew to the right. But in the next moment, another flying sword appeared in front of her silently. Seven tilted her body slightly and perfectly dodged the flying sword. But at this moment, Yi Xian suddenly appeared in front of her and slashed down. The sword was as fast as lightning. His current sword speed was much faster than before. Just as Yi Xian slashed down with his sword, a sword suddenly pierced the tip of his sword. In an instant, Yi Xian's expression changed drastically. This was because he realized that the power in his sword had been completely dissolved. Yi Xian stopped and looked at Xueqi. The latter said softly, Everyone has their flaws. If we can target their flaws, we will be able to achieve twice the result with half the effort. Yi Xian said solemnly, One sword to break all techniques? Seven nodded. However, it is extremely difficult to break all techniques with one sword. Yi Xian asked, Even you can't do it? Seven looked at Yi Xian. I am saying that it is difficult for you. For me, it isn't difficult. Yi Xian's face was filled with black lines. Damn, Xueqi walked towards Yi Xian. You have a good foundation, and your flying sword is barely passable. Especially your sword will and your belief in the way of the sword. It's something I've never seen before. Unfortunately, your learning is a little mixed, and even a little crooked, which greatly reduces your strength. Your sword path can be simpler. Yi Xian asked right away, How can it be simpler? Seven opened her palm and a sword appeared in her hand. What is this? Yi Xian said solemnly. A sword. Seven nodded. It is a sword. That is simple. Yi Xian kept silent for a moment before saying, You are saying that when I use the sword, I mix in too many things? A weird expression flashed in Seven's eyes. You aren't that stupid. Yi Xian, Seven said, You have too many external objects. Although they are really strong, it makes your sword impure. A pure sword is even sharper. So, you have to separate your external objects from your sword. Yi Xian asked, Can I merge them? Seven thought about it and said, How do you want to merge them? Yi Xian opened his palm. The Tao Law appeared in his palm. This is the Grand Tao Law. Can it be merged with my sword path? Seven took a look at the Grand Tao Law and nodded. Yes. Yi Xian was delighted and asked right away, How? Seven said, Can you lend it to me? Yi Xian nodded and passed the Great Tao Law to Xueqi. Xueqi took a look at the great Tao Law and said softly, "The power of the earth spirit is gathered here." As she said that, she looked towards Yi Xian. "To merge, you have to control them completely. Do you know how to use earth spirit power?" Yi Xian shook his head. Just at that moment, the grand Tao Law in Seven's hand shook, and in the next moment, a golden sword appeared in front of her. A sword formed from earth spirit power. The ground around started to shake and large amounts of earth spirit power gathered towards the sword. Pretty much instantly, all the earth spirit power in the entire Order City gathered into the sword. Seven passed the sword to Yi Xian. Yi Xian took it and looked at Seven in confusion. Seven said, "When you slash out, the power is Grand Tao Law and it is a one-time use." Yi Xian kept silent. Seven said, "You have to understand what is yours. The sword is yours. If you want to merge, you have to reach a realm where everything can be a sword. Your sword is the core. Be it Grand Tao Law or other external objects, they can only be strengthened by external objects." As she said that, she took the Halran Gaia from Yi Xian's hand and said, "In my hands, it is a sword first and then Grand Tao Law." Yi Xian kept silent for a moment and then nodded, "I understand." Seven said, "What you need to do now is to be simple, to make your sword simple. If your body is strong enough, these external objects will make you stronger. But if you completely rely on the power of these external objects, you will become weaker and weaker." Yi Xian asked, "How do I make it simpler?" Seven said, "Don't rely on your random things and be a pure swordsman." Yi Xian kept silent. Seven said, "You can't bear to?" Yi Xian kept silent. Seven said, "When you hesitate, deep in your heart, you are already infatuated with these external objects. Although they are strong enough, they are only temporary. Swordsman, having a sword is enough." Having a sword was enough. Yi Xian said softly, "I understand." After saying that, he kept the Grand Tao Law. Only the sword. Seven nodded. She was about to say something when Nangongwan came to her side and said, "Your Majesty, they are here." Seven said, "Did you miss anything?" Nangongwan thought about it for a moment and then shook her head. "No, everything has been arranged." Seven nodded and then she looked towards Yi Xian. "Let's go." Yi Xian said solemnly, "To Tendo." Seven nodded. Yi Xian nodded. "Let's go." To Tendo. He didn't know what Seven wanted him to do, but he knew that she definitely wasn't asking him to help fight. An existence like Tendo was definitely not something he could fight now. Roughly an hour later, a giant golden dragon flew out from the Order City and then towards the depths of the starry sky. P.S. Can I apply for leave? I have been a little arrogant recently and want to head out for a day. Chapter 628. Misty Sky Ocean. On a small island, Tang Yen stood quietly. He looked up at the horizon with a solemn expression. At this moment, the Demon King and Spiritual Master Chu appeared. Spiritual Master Chu said in a low voice, "That little girl has already gone with her men." Tang Yen said, "What are their chances of winning?" Spiritual Master Chu shook his head. "This divine nation is also unfathomable." Unfathomable. Divine nation's strength had exceeded all of their expectations. At this moment, Spiritual Master Chu sneered, "However, I think she's dreaming if she wants to kill a Tendo." Tendo. Tang Yen nodded. Those who had never encountered a Tendo would never know how terrifying a Tendo was. At this moment, the Demon King suddenly said, "That Yi Xian also went." Yi Xian. Hearing these two words, Spiritual Master Chu's face immediately turned cold. "That traitor! We should have killed him." The Demon King shook his head. "Let's not talk about him. Let's talk about the Order Alliance." Order Alliance. Hearing this, the atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. The Star Lord died in battle, and now the Order Alliance has a leader, but his strength is too low compared to them. At this moment, devouring the Order Alliance is the best opportunity. At this moment, Tang Yen suddenly said, "Let's put this aside for now." Spiritual Master Chu nodded. "Let's wait for Divine Nation's results first." The Demon King suddenly said, "What if she succeeds?" Spiritual Master Chu sneered. "Is that possible? That's a Tendo we're talking about." Tang Yen said softly, "It won't be that simple. Let's wait and see." The Demon King nodded. Let's wait and see. Let's see if that little girl can defy the heavens. In the distant horizon, a golden dragon spread its wings and soared. The colossal golden dragon's body was so huge that it practically blotted out the sky. On the golden dragon, Xueqi stood on the dragon's head. Behind her were Xiangqing and Xiangyu. Not far to the right were Confucian Institution's Master Lu Fu, military school's Han Yuzi, and Wang Jingji. Not far to the left of Xiangqing and Yu was a middle-aged man holding a saber. Defense saber. The #1 figure on the divine list 20 years ago. Apart from these people, there was also a black-clothed man with his eyes covered. The black-clothed man also held a long saber in his right hand. Yan Dao. It was as famous as the Guanyin saber and came from the same lineage. Apart from them, there was also a man holding a spear. The man looked to be in his 30s, dressed in white and wearing an iron mask. Yu Zongxing. This person had already reached the realm of spear god at the age of 21. Of course, even a heaven-defying genius would pale in comparison to Xueqi. At the tail of the dragon, there was a woman in her 20s, with a slender figure and a long black staff in her hands. #1 on the divine list. Yuan Yi. He was currently ranked first on the divine list. Something worth mentioning was that when the previous Lord God was choosing his successor, there were 3 people at that time, and Yuan Yi was one of them. In the end, everyone knew the result. Xueqi had become the Divine Kingdom's divine lord. Standing among this group of people, Yi Xian suddenly felt that he was a little weak. Soon, the dragon entered the starry sky. Yi Xian was a little bored. He came to Yuan Yi's side and sized her up, then waved his hand. Hi. Yuan Yi opened her eyes and looked at Yi Xian. Yi Xian smiled. Let's get to know each other. I'm Yi Xian. Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. What's up? Yi Xian nodded. She sat next to Yuan Yi and asked, Miss Yuan Yi, I heard that you're ranked first on the divine list. I heard that you are #1 on the god list. I have a question. What is my ranking in your god nation? Yuan Yi glanced at Yi Xian and did not speak. Yi Xian said again, I think if I go all out, I should be able to rank in the top 3, right? Yuan Yi still did not speak. Yi Xian looked at Yuan Yi. Miss Yuan Yi, I think you're a divine sorcerer. Do you know any ancient secret techniques? Speaking of this, he was a little excited. I've sparred with some divine sorcerers. Their ancient secret techniques are very interesting. You know them too, right? Yuan Yi was silent. Yi Xian asked again, I want to learn these ancient secret techniques too. With a wave of my hand, I can summon wind, clouds, thunder, and lightning. It looks very cool. Yuan Yi suddenly said, Shut up. Yi Xian's expression froze. Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. Are we very close? Yi Xian smiled sheepishly. We're strangers the first time, but friends the second time. Yuan Yi was silent for a moment then said, City Lord Yi, what exactly do you want? Yi Xian said, I'm just chatting. I don't mean anything else. Yuan Yi said, I need to meditate. I can't chat. Yi Xian nodded. All right, I won't disturb you anymore. After saying that, he turned around and left. But very quickly, he stopped and turned to look at Yuan Yi. Miss Yuan Yi, do you think I can become a divine sorcerer? Yuan Yi looked at Yi Xian. Let's talk somewhere else? Yi Xian's eyelids twitched. This woman wanted to hit him. A moment later, Yi Xian came to Seven's side. He was about to say something when Seven suddenly said, Nangong, chat with him. Yi Xian. 2 hours later, the giant dragon entered the depths of space while they were still within the chaotic universe. Beside Nangong Wan, Yi Xian suddenly asked, Miss Nangong, I won't hold it against you for wanting to kill me in the past. Nangong Wan looked at Yi Xian and smiled. It seems like I have to thank City Lord Yi. Yi Xian looked into the depths of space and said softly, Miss Nangong, I am curious about something. God Nation is so strong. But has anyone left the chaotic universe? Nangong Wan was silent for a moment, then nodded. Yes. Yi Xian asked, What world is outside the chaotic universe? Nangong Wan said softly, What other world can it be? A world like ours. It's also a dangerous world. Yi Xian said solemnly, A dangerous world? How dangerous? Nan Gongwan smiled. City Lord Yi, do you want to go out and have a look? Yi Xian nodded. A little. Nan Gongwan shook her head. You are too weak. You will die if you go out. Yi Xian looked into the depths of space, feeling a little lost. Weak. After coming into contact with God Nation, he realized that he was really too weak. There were too many strong people in this world. After a moment, Yi Xian asked again, how strong is the Tendo? Hearing this, Nan Gongwan's expression gradually became solemn. Very strong. Yi Xian asked, how strong is very strong? Nan Gongwan glanced at Yi Xian. You will know when we fight. Slaughter the Tendo. Yi Xian fell silent. At this moment, the golden dragon suddenly sped up. Yi Xian looked up and saw that they had already arrived in the depths of space. About half an hour later, the golden dragon suddenly stopped, and above them, a huge eye suddenly condensed. The huge eye looked down at Yi Xian and the others, its eyes indifferent. Yi Xian looked at the huge eye. Tendo? Nan Gongwan did not answer. In the distance, Xueqi looked at the Guandao, who nodded slightly, and the next moment, the Guandao shot up into the sky. In the starry sky, the huge eye suddenly shot out 2 black lightning bolts. Wherever the lightning passed, space turned into nothingness. At this moment, the Guandao in the sky suddenly drew its blade and slashed. Chi! With this slash, the 2 lightning bolts instantly turned into nothingness, but the Guandao did not stop. It turned into a blade light and slashed at the huge eye. There was a moment of silence. Boom! The entire starry sky suddenly trembled, and then the huge eye slowly turned illusory, while the Guandao returned to the golden dragon. Yi Xian looked at the Guandao with a solemn expression. This person is so strong. Soon, the huge eye in the sky disappeared completely. At this time, Xueqi lightly stomped his right foot forward. The huge dragon soared forward, disappearing into the depths of the starry sky. About an hour later, the dragon stopped, and not far from them, there was a door. Above the door, there was a small black word. Dao. Seeing this door, everyone's expression gradually became solemn. Xueqi looked at the door and just as she was about to speak, a voice came from inside. Genius from Divine Nation, come in and have a seat? Obviously, this was referring to Xueqi. Before Xueqi could speak, Nan Gongwan suddenly said, No. Xiang Qing also said solemnly, Your Majesty, don't underestimate the enemy. Xueqi said softly, It can't kill me. After saying that, she walked towards the door. As if thinking of something, she suddenly stopped and turned to look at Yi Xian. You come in with me. Yi Xian. Everyone looked at Yi Xian, their eyes filled with confusion. Yi Xian thought about it, then nodded, Okay. After saying that, she walked through the door with Xueqi. Inside the door, there was another world. On a small island. Yi Xian and Xueqi appeared on a small island. The island was not big, and the water around it was so clear that the bottom could be seen. Above them, there was a blue sky and white clouds. And not far in front of them, there was a woman sitting. She looked to be in her 20s, wearing a white dress. Her hair was white, and even her eyebrows were white. At this moment, the woman in white was looking at Yi Xian and Xueqi. Xueqi and Yi Xian walked over. In front of the woman, there was a tea table, and she made a gesture of invitation. Xueqi sat down, and Yi Xian did the same. Yi Xian's eyes were on the white-haired woman, and he was really shocked. So this was Tendo. The woman in white sized up Xueqi and smiled. You are even stronger than Wu Anning, and you are more of a monster than her. Xueqi looked at her. You have 2 choices, do you want to hear them? The woman in white smiled. Yes. Xueqi nodded. First, leave the chaotic universe and never come back. Second, I will kill you and make you disappear from the world. Yi Xian, the woman in white shook her head and smiled. Little girl, I have to admit that you are a monster. However, if you want to kill me, it doesn't seem to be a simple matter. Xueqi looked at the woman in white. You choose the second, right? The woman in white smiled. You have 2 choices too, do you want to hear them? Xueqi nodded. Speak. The woman in white looked at Xueqi. You can manage the world below, but you can't touch anything about me. Xueqi asked. What about the second? The woman in white smiled. I will kill you. I will wipe out your god country. Xueqi nodded. I choose the second. The moment she said that, the entire area became silent. One could even hear a pin drop. Chapter 629. The second one. As soon as Xueqi said this, Yi Xian knew that there was no way to resolve this matter peacefully. The white-haired woman wasn't surprised. She smiled. I'm a bit curious. Are you really going to kill me for the sake of the people down there, or for yourself? Xueqi looked at the white-haired woman. For myself, and for the sake of everyone behind me. The white-haired woman laughed. But have you ever thought about how my death would affect the Chaos Verse? I am the last Tendo of the Chaos Verse. Tendo? Xueqi shook her head. You gave yourself that title. The white-haired woman narrowed her eyes. She didn't say anything. Xueqi continued, there is no such thing as a Tendo in this universe. You are just a spirit, one of the more powerful spirits in the Chaos Verse. As for you, you call yourself a Tendo who stands above all living beings and views them as ants. If the people of this universe want to obtain the prime essences of this universe, they must submit to you and be enslaved by you. Without you, this universe will be a better place. The white-haired woman laughed. Then do you know that if I hadn't controlled the prime essences, given your greed as a humans, the prime essences would have been wiped out long ago. At that time, those who came before would enjoy it, while those who came after would suffer. Do you understand? Xueqi shook her head. You didn't do it for the sake of the Chaos Verse. You did it for yourself. The white-haired woman said, I did it for myself. But do you know what would have happened to the Chaos Verse if I hadn't suppressed it? Xueqi said softly, do we need to thank you? The white-haired woman shook her head. I just wanted to tell you that I didn't enslave the living beings of this universe. I took over the prime essences of the Chaos Verse, but I didn't take everything for myself. In addition, because of my control, there have been very few emperors in the Chaos Verse. You should know what will happen if there are too many of them. Yi Xian suddenly asked, what will happen? The white-haired woman glanced at Yi Xian. Often, the more powerful a person is, the more selfish and greedy they become. If there are too many great emperors, the source energy will be absorbed by them and they might even be able to control it. When she spoke up to hear, she glanced at Seven and smiled. If I die, then the quintessence will be under her control. At that time, she can give it to whoever she wants. The reason why the divine nations were getting stronger and stronger was because they had absorbed all the origin of the Eastern Wasteland domain. Now, nearly 90% of the Eastern Wasteland domain's origin has disappeared. Seven said softly, Source belongs to this universe and not one person. As she spoke, she stood up. Since you don't choose to leave, then make your move. With that, Xiangqing and the others appeared behind Xueqi. The white-haired lady smiled. They are all Emperor Realm. At this point, she suddenly looked at Yi Xian. What I don't understand is why did you call this guy here? Yi Xian was speechless. Seven said calmly. Is he weak? The white-haired woman sized up Yi Xian. Weak? Yi Xian said in a low voice. I'm not that weak, am I? The white-haired lady smiled. At least for now. However, you surprised me, because that pagoda actually recognized you as its master. Yi Xian asked. You recognize it? The white-haired lady shook her head. No, I only came into contact with it once. As she spoke, she opened her right hand and a fiery lotus suddenly appeared. Fire. Not far away. Nan Gongwan frowned. Holy fiery lotus. Yi Xian looked at Nan Gongwan and the latter explained, Holy fiery lotus, the first divine fire in the entire chaotic universe, comparable to a peak emperor. At this time, a crystal blue water droplet suddenly appeared behind the white-haired lady. The water droplet was only the size of a thumb, crystal clear and beautiful. Water soul. Nan Gongwan looked at the white-haired lady. If I'm not wrong, the 5 element sacred spirits are in your hands. The white-haired lady smiled. You're half right. As soon as she finished speaking, a golden ball suddenly appeared on her right. The golden ball emitted a faint golden glow and contained an extremely terrifying energy. On the white-haired lady's left, there was a wooden branch and a small clay man. The wooden branch was dark green and there were 2 green leaves on it. The small clay man was only the size of a palm but looked like a real person. At this moment,
It was smiling at Xueqi and the others. 5 elements sacred spirits. Xueqi looked at the white-haired lady. That's it. The white-haired lady smiled. Still not enough? As soon as she finished speaking, the small clay man beside her suddenly rushed out. The moment it rushed out, Xiangqing, who was beside Xueqi, suddenly took a step forward and slashed down with his sword. Bang! A wave of sword energy spread out and everyone retreated. As for Xiangqing, who had attacked with his sword, he retreated again and again. This time, he retreated to the surface of the sea thousands of meters away. Seeing this scene, Yi Xian's expression became solemn. Was this small clay man so abnormal? In the distance, the little mud man grinned. In the next moment, it charged towards Xiangqing again. It was too fast, and everywhere it passed, space was directly torn apart by it. Xiangqing's eyes narrowed slightly while a trace of seriousness could be seen in his eyes. He didn't dare act carelessly, and he immediately took a step forward. In an instant, an expanse of sword energy surged forward. Rumble! In practically an instant, the seawater beneath Xiangqing's feet instantly evaporated while he retreated explosively once more. He was suppressed. Xiangqing was instantly suppressed as soon as the battle began. Meanwhile, the white-haired woman suddenly smiled. This swordsman isn't bad. As soon as she finished speaking, the wooden branch by her side suddenly floated forward, and then numerous vines suddenly appeared in the surroundings. The vines seemed as if they were growing out of space, and they were extremely terrifying. Meanwhile, Xiangyu suddenly stood in front of Xueqi, and then strands of sword energy swept towards the surroundings like a net. Hiss! 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 Numerous dense sounds of cutting resounded incessantly in the surroundings. It wasn't just the vines that were being sliced apart. Even the space in the surroundings was being sliced apart. It was an extremely shocking sight. Meanwhile, the wooden branch suddenly floated towards Xiangyu. Xiangyu's figure shook, and he flew up into the air. He'd only just flown up into the air when a sharp vine suddenly shot up from below. Xiangyu's gaze was icy cold as he swiftly swung his sword. Hiss! As the sword slashed down, the sharp vine was directly split into 2. But in the next moment, countless vines drilled out from the space around Xiangyu. They were densely packed, and Xiangyu was instantly drowned by them. Moreover, a ray of sword energy could be faintly seen amidst the vines. Xueqi gazed at the white-haired woman. The white-haired woman grinned, and then the golden ball suddenly shot towards the Guanzhong blade by Xueqi's side. The Guanzhong blade suddenly drew its blade. Bang! An expanse of golden light suddenly erupted, and then both the Guanzhong blade and the golden ball were pushed back at practically the exact same time. But in the next moment, both of them shot explosively towards each other. Meanwhile, the ball of water by the white-haired woman's side suddenly shot towards Yan Dao. Yan Dao's face was expressionless. He took a step forward, and a ray of sword energy suddenly flashed across the field. Saber energy flashed. Rumble! The surrounding space instantly cracked, but in the next moment, the surrounding space returned to normal. In the next moment, numerous water dragons suddenly appeared in the surroundings and shot towards Yan Dao. The densely packed water dragons were extremely frightening. Not far away, Yi Xian's face was solemn because he found that the people on Xueqi's side were all suppressed. It was as if these spirits were invulnerable, and their strength was endless. The most terrifying thing was that the surrounding space seemed to be helping these spirits. Spirits of heaven and earth. Blessed by heaven and earth. Yi Xian looked at the white-haired woman, who still had the flame in her hand. The white-haired woman glanced at the people around Xueqi, and then her gaze fell on Yu Zongxing, who was holding a long spear. Yu Zongxing nodded slightly, and he walked forward. The flame in the white-haired woman's hand suddenly floated out. The moment it floated out of her palm, the surrounding temperature skyrocketed, making people feel as if they were in the middle of a volcano. It was extremely terrifying. Yu Zongxing's face was expressionless, and he raised his spear. Bang! A flame instantly erupted, and a wave of fire instantly engulfed the surroundings. However, the space around Xueqi, the white-haired woman, and the others was very normal, and the flames automatically dispersed. At this moment, there were 4 people by Xueqi's side. Master Lu Fu of the Confucian Institution, Han Yuzi of the School of Military, and Wang Jingji and Yuan Yi of the School of Vertical and Horizontal. Of course, Nan Gongwan didn't count. After all,
She didn't have any combat strength. At this moment, Master Lu Fu suddenly smiled. I wonder what you're going to use against the three of us. The white-haired woman looked at Master Lu Fu and smiled. Don't worry. As soon as she finished speaking, she gently pointed her finger to the right. In an instant, the island split open, and a terrifying aura suddenly appeared. Under everyone's gazes, a huge black beast suddenly walked out from the ground. The huge beast was 30 meters tall, shaped like an ox, and completely black. It emitted an extremely terrifying and primordial aura. Seeing this huge beast, a voice suddenly resounded from Yi Xian. This is the D-Monarch beast. The voice of the Emperor Hound. Yi Xian hurriedly asked, What's the D-Monarch beast? The Imperial Hound spoke solemnly, the guardian beast of the soul race. The guardian beast of the soul race? Yi Xian was stunned, and then he said, It's your sworn enemy? The Imperial Hound replied, Yes. Yi Xian said, Are you going to come out and fight it? The Imperial Hound spoke furiously. What the hell? Even though it isn't at its peak, it's clearly not far from it. What about me? I'm in a weak state right now. Should I come out and ask for a beating? Yi Xian spoke solemnly, Brother Imperial Hound, have your injuries not healed yet? The Imperial Hound spoke solemnly. It's not that I haven't healed, but my bloodline might be evolving. It's a critical period right now, so I can't attack. Once my bloodline evolves, this fellow will be trash before me. Yi Xian was speechless. Not too far away, the white-haired woman suddenly smiled. D-Monarch, play with our city lord Yi. Yi Xian instantly flared up. What the hell? I'm not playing with it. The white-haired woman smiled. Actually, I've been eyeing you for a long time. But in order to deal with Divine Nation, I've been busy. And that Star-Lord is extremely stupid. Let's not talk about that stupid fellow. Since you're here, I can't let you escape no matter what this time. As soon as she finished speaking, the D-Monarch beside her charged directly at Yi Xian. Yi Xian found it hard to breathe due to the strong pressure exerted by this charge. Yi Xian was shocked and angry. Suddenly, he pointed the soul-suppressing sword at the D-Monarch and shouted, Evil creature, do you know what this is? I am the reincarnation of Hades. Hurry up and kneel. Little soul. P.S. I can't wait for the 15th. Erupt tomorrow. Erupt tomorrow. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.